Welcome, everyone, to the Islanders Never Say Die podcast. I'm your host, TJ, and with me here, as always, is our NHL analyst and expert, the grumpy old man. They say there's no shame to his game because he's always the same.
And also with us today, the menace of the Islander fan base, PhilzFacts. He never met a fact that he wouldn't want to dispute. He's wrong every time. PhilzFacts. Welcome in, Phil.
I love that intro.
Phil, let me just say something.
I like being the villain.
I know. Believe me. You are absolutely the villain of this podcast. Here's the thing. Look, everyone who's watched this podcast when Phil's been on before, let me tell you something. He's always had that white dress shirt. Today, he's really going out on a limb. It's white with some little blue stripes on there, light blue stripes. Thanks, Phil, for trying to liven it up.
Hey, it's the summer months, Grumpy. It's summertime. We're out there golfing. The season's over. This is casual, relaxed Phil, Grumpy.
I've come in with blue before. I'm not always white.
Phil never leaves his wife's basement, ever. That's where he spends his time.
Correct.
Grumpy,
I mean, it's also my basement.
Behind it.
It's not just my wife's basement. It's
the girl's basement.
I pay the bills. So
okay.
Technically, it's all mine. Whatever.
There it is, Grumpy. But for those of you who are new to the channel, welcome. This is a twice a week All Islanders podcast that takes place every single Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
What time is it now? What time is it now?
8:30. 8:30. Okay. Yeah.
Why don't you just be fair? Why don't you just say we start at 8, but it actually starts at 8:30? Maybe you should start at 8.
Imagine it's kind of like you've got dinner reservations and the place is booked. It's running a little behind. We made the reservations for 8. Sometimes they're right on time. Other times you got to give them a few minutes. It's like you go to the doctor, Grump. Come on now.
Okay. When you tell somebody you're going to be somewhere at a certain time, you should be there. Like, let's say the last rocket ship off the planet leaves at 8 o'clock. Well, when TJ finally got there, all he'd see is a little vapor trail. That's all. Oh, what the hell? I'm fashionably late.
Oh, goodness. There it is.
Disgrace to the airwaves, too. You and Phil.
We try our hardest. But yes, it's a twice a week All Islanders podcast that takes place every single Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you're new to the channel, we invite you to subscribe on YouTube, to like on Facebook, and to follow on Twitter. Also, if you hit the little thumbs up, apparently that helps the algorithm and helps get this fun time of talking about the New York Islanders out to the masses. And for Phil, right? If you're new, first time seeing, if you've never heard of Phil's Facts, if you've never seen him on the show, best way to make sure you keep up to date with everything Phil's Facts and all the hot takes he's got out there is you have got to follow him on Twitter at Philz with a Z Facts on Twitter. That's the best place you can make sure you stay up to date with everything Phil's Facts wise. Sometimes it's good for a laugh. Sometimes you get a heart attack. Sometimes it's like, holy crap, this is thought provoking. It's a mixture. You get the whole kit and caboodle, as they'd say, Grump.
Feels like the weather. You just hang around every 15 minutes is bound to change.
Oh, no.
What about the thing that people say about Phil that he should have more than one Z after the L? It should be 3 Zs. We've heard that before also.
Oh, no.
I'm entertaining. Come on. I'm highly entertaining.
He is.
That's not what anyone says about
more
you.
People are watching tonight because I'm here.
That's it.
They want to see you get your lunch handed to you. That's what it is.
No,
why don't you regale us with tales of the failure of Ilya Sorokin? I can't do that. I can't do that.
No, we're not going to talk. We're not going to talk
that, Grumpy. Come on now.
Okay, let me tell you something.
He did make a tweet about that recently, saying if Sorokin made a save here, we would be advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals, or we would be facing off against the Devils. And I'm like, this guy, Grumpy.
Well, you can't listen. You can't say that's not true.
It's not true.
That's not true.
You think we win that series? You think we win that series?
If Sorokin is better in game 2, very possibly.
No, the answer is no. Because we don't beat Carolina. We never beat Carolina. Carolina owns us.
If he could just shut the door in game 2 and not give up a series of really bad goals, for lack of a better way to put it, three not great goals were given up in that game.
All I'll say is if Freddie Anderson played, that would have been a sweep.
Sure.
I
I agree with
Ronta,
that.
how many goals right through his body can this guy give up?
Listen, the advantage that we knew we had going in was goaltending.
Okay,
And
here's the thing. I got to stop you because
Hold on.
what people don't realize, TJ and Phil, they talk to each other till late hours of the night, numerous times a week, honestly, and they squabble the whole time.
We're
I'm just like,
strange lovers, Grumpy.
I'm not going that far.
Our relationship, Grump. That's
I'm
what
not
it
going
is.
that far. All I'll say is that I have to play referee for these two, and I don't want to do that today, Phil. Don't make me do it.
we're not going to do that today. Absolutely
I
not.
bet you do.
Oh, look at Grumpy. Oh man, I tell you.
Here's the thing. Everyone knows I love Phil. He's a great guy, but I'm going to rip on him all night. That's because I like you, Phil. You know, it's like those people. You know they love you because they are picking on you all the time. So
Wouldn't
Phil
have it
is
any
good
other way.
people. You just don't know what the hell he's talking about most of the time.
I do want to. I guess we could talk about that, right? I do want to talk a little bit about the series. We did not have a show this last Saturday. Somebody fell asleep and missed showtime. It wasn't me. Maybe it was Grumpy. I don't know who it was. Somebody fell asleep and missed showtime, so we had to cancel Saturday's performance.
Who takes a 6.5-hour nap on a Saturday?
Your guess is as good as mine on that one, Grumpy. I don't know who would be taking a 6.5-hour long nap on a Saturday.
Only a loser.
But yeah, that's true. That's probably true. But we will not be, just a general housekeeping item, we will not be having a show this Saturday. Sorry. So I'm going to give you advance. I'm not going to give you 30 minutes after showtime or an hour after showtime notice. We will not be having a show this Saturday. That being said, yeah, it's
almost every Wednesday and Saturday, almost. The times are irrelevant. Why don't you just say the podcast starts at 12 o'clock in the afternoon? Why not just pick any arbitrary time? Because you're not going to make that time anyway.
We're close. We're close enough, Grumpy. We're close. We're close. And hey, we've done a good job with our New Year's resolution. We've been almost on track.
No, you have not.
Maybe 50% of the times we've been on time, guys. I need the support of the chat. 50% of the time, I'd say I've been on time this year.
I bet you're not getting that support that you like.
Oh, I'm sure I won't. I did want to talk. The last podcast we had, I guess it was more just talking about the season as a whole. I mean, like it was, I'm not saying I was shocked by the outcome. It's kind of set in, right? You're seeing a lot of comments out here now saying, oh, look how easy Carolina's manhandling the Devils. If the Islanders were in that position, we would be going to the Eastern Conference Finals. And I want to get your guys' takes on it, Phil and Grumpy.
Go ahead, Phil. I'll let you spout some ridiculous, whatever you have to say, and then I'll speak the truth.
Okay, I did put out a tweet in jest, but no, I think the Devils are a tough matchup. Lots of speed, lots of skill. So again, you can't necessarily say how you would do against an opponent just on the basis of how you did against a different opponent. Like there was this Ranger guy I follow, and he tweeted out something which was to the effect of Rangers own Carolina, Devils own the Rangers, and Carolina owns the Devils. Hockey is weird. So it was something to that effect, right? Like the Rangers have won 9 out of the last 11 with Carolina. This year, New Jersey really had the Rangers number, and I know you're seeing a very lopsided series. I'll say there's a couple of things that have been somewhat eye-opening about this Carolina series with the Devils. For starters, if you wanted to feel a little bit less bad about 1 for 18 on the power play, New Jersey's had no success in the power play either. So Carolina has a very good penalty kill, and New Jersey has a good power play. It was, I think, around 21% in the regular season. It was decent against the Rangers. The only power play goal they have, it was completely of no consequence, and it was as a player was getting out of the box from a 5-on-3. So technically it was scored 5-on-4, but the guy coming out of the box was in the frame, and it was the 8th goal in an 8-4 win on Sunday, I think it was. So that's one thing that you can take away from it. Carolina's penalty kill, very good. The other thing I would take away from it, New Jersey, outside of that 8-goal game, 3 games of 1 goal. They're hard to score on in general. So just because all those offensive pieces are missing doesn't mean that they're necessarily...
He can't even say what he's saying with a straight face. Even now, he's trying to maintain the straight face that we love, but he can't do it. Go ahead, Phil.
Get in there, Grumpy. Get in there, Grumpy. You know what? You just totally throw my train of thought. Just get in there.
Phil. Okay, Phil.
Get in there.
We don't beat Carolina. We never beat Carolina. We weren't beating Carolina. They were missing 3 of their top 6 forwards. They had a backup goalie in, and still they should have won game 5. If it wasn't for Ilya Sorokin, they should have been a gentleman's sweep. The Islanders, they deserve to win 1 game. If we take away 2 minutes and 27 seconds, this is a Phil thing. I'm doing one of those Phil things. If you take away 2 minutes and 27 seconds where the Islanders scored 4 goals, we only scored, 7 goals in that series? No. We were never beating Carolina. Carolina's too good for us. I mean, well, how many, TJ, tell me the number. Of the last 20 games against Carolina, how many of the Islanders won?
I can count this high all the way to 4. We've won 4 of the last 20 times we played them. They're a good team. Now,
so if the 3 little piggies if the 3 little piggies had another sister, that would be the number of games that the Islanders have beaten Carolina in the last 20. Is that correct?
Sure. Yeah. I will say this. I did make it known on this podcast multiple times. If the Islanders somehow found a way to beat Carolina, I thought we'd have a better chance. I thought we would be the favorite against the Devils. I've mentioned it before. I think the Devils were in a situation where they bit off a lot in a short time frame. You don't go from being a perennial terrible team, lottery pick, to where, hey, now we just stumbled our way into the Eastern Conference Finals. That doesn't happen. It usually takes a little bit of a progression. I really thought that Islanders had a good chance to beat the Devils, and we're seeing right here the Carolina Hurricanes that just are manhandling the Devils. I mean,
Carolina's good.
How many goals could the Devils give up in a short time frame like that? And then they call the timeout and give up another goal right thereafter. It's like a comedy of errors right now. And here's the thing. We've been getting this comment a lot, Grumpy, and I feel like we have to address this early on in the show. People say, oh, well, if the goal is only to win the Stanley Cup, that means if the Devils lose to Carolina, the Devils had an ultimate failure or complete failure this year. And I don't know if people are trying to be they're just trying to be. They're number one. They're maybe not with it. Maybe they're not quick enough with it. I don't know. Maybe they're not quick-witted enough to understand what we mean by this, or maybe they're just being purposely disingenuous and not trying to understand the point. I think it's more the latter than anything else. But you get a lot of those to where, oh, every team that doesn't win the cup had an ultimate failure this year. That's not true. Teams that are in different spots and different progressions with where their franchise is determines what the ultimate goal is. The Arizona Coyotes goal was not to win the Stanley Cup. The Arizona Coyotes goal was, hey, maybe we can win Connor Bedard, but we want to go ahead and develop young players. We want to get the young players some time and help them develop along the way. Every team has a different goal. The Devils' goal going into this season was maybe we can make the postseason for the first time in how many years? They've accomplished that, and they've exceeded. They even won a playoff round. This year is a success for the Devils. Even if they got beat and swept by the Carolina Hurricanes, it would be a success. Just like the Islanders, when they first made the postseason and they beat the Penguins and they got swept by the Carolina Hurricanes, that season was a success for us based off the expectations going into the year. It all has to do with your team's expectations. And I don't know if people are just like pretending they're not picking up on it or if they really are just not, perhaps.
Ignorant. It's just ignorance. They're trying to call us out on that stuff. You explain, TJ, very eloquently.
I was going to say, very eloquently said.
Which is really surprising, right, Phil? I mean, you talk to TJ.
Very not exactly the wordsmith, but that was fantastic.
Really, exactly. But you're 100% right, TJ. Yeah. And for the Islanders, when you're a team that, lucked themselves into 2 Eastern Conference Finals for a couple of years under Barry Trotz, then you say Stanley Cup or bust. You don't even make the playoffs. You have the excuse train get rolled out. Then this year was going to be the bounce back. You squeak into the playoffs. And then, there was no chance of us beating Carolina, like I said. That's why I find it interesting. Well, we would have played the Devils. We would have had a chance against Devils. What did I tell it? I was steadfast all year. I said, if we have to play Carolina, what's going to happen?
We get beat.
We're going to get beat. When we played Carolina, Phil, what happened?
We got beat.
Lost a very close series.
We got beat.
I'm sick and tired of that. We lost a very close series narrative. We got to debate. We got to debate on this one.
No, it was as close as Carolina wanted to be.
It was a very close series.
Carolina said, you know what? Let's string these Islander fans along, and then we're going to rip their hearts out.
When you have the lead in 4 out of the 6 games past the midway point of the third period, and then 2 of those leads are blown, one on a terrible goal from below the goal line, and then you have 2 really, really bad overtime goals. To me, that's a close series. I think we could all agree that Sorokin should not have given up that overtime goal in Game 6 to Paul Stasny.
I think it was a lucky goal. It's a
luck or not luck, that goal can't go in. That can't be how your season ends.
We do not score enough goals to support our goalie.
Okay, you could say that about the Devils. You could say that about the Lightning. You could say that about the Rangers. You could say that about every NHL team. The bottom line is, it is hard to score goals in the NHL playoffs. As you're seeing right now, it's a 1-0 game heading into the third period with the Leafs and the Panthers right now. Right, the Leafs in 5 straight games have not broken more than 2 goals. Okay, it's hard to score in the playoffs when you're able to dig your goalie out of a 2-0 hole in Game 2. When the second goal was objectively atrocious, and score 3 straight and take complete control of the game, and then he gives up a goal from below the goal line, you can't tell me we don't score enough goals. We had enough goals in that game. If I were to tell you, hey, by the way, we're going to go in, we're going to erase a 2-goal deficit, 7.5 minutes left in the third period, we're going to be up 3-2. You're going to tell me that that's not the kind of game that Sorokin could win, that 3 goals is not enough for the all-world Sorokin? It is. He just didn't get it done in that particular game.
Here's one thing.
But here's the thing. You're leaving out the most important part, Phil. You didn't say the opponent, because as soon as you say it's Carolina, it's like, oh yeah, because we don't beat Carolina.
I don't care
Carolina's bitch. That's what it is.
I'm not going to even use that as a point. My reasoning is this: just like we did on the Barry Trotz, when we go up and have a lead in the third period, we play turtle shell hockey. Hey, let's go ahead and lay 5 guys within a proximity of about 2 foot from the net and go ahead and try to stop anything we can, block every single shot, and hope to pray that there's no opportunities that come our way. It's the same.
It's just not true. Go back and watch those
turtle shell.
Go back and watch those runs from 2020, 21, and from 1920 and 2021. It was not a shell. With the way they closed out the Flyers, they kicked the crap out of them.
Flyers suck.
They didn't suck that year. First place in the Metro that year.
The only time the Flyers beat us is when we went into overtime. That was all the games they won were overtime games.
True. The Flyers were a heavy favorite in that series, though.
And that's why
they were the first place team.
Carolina said, "Get them into overtime." That's a win for us.
You know what? In that Game 2 game, we didn't even go into a shell. The direct shift after we went up 3-2, Hudson Fasching missed a wide open net. We kept pushing. We kept pressing.
More
I
talent.
disagree.
We need more talent.
We did not go into with that game. Game 2 was our second best game played in the series.
How many
Game 3 was the best.
we see that we were just trying to fight for overtime?
I'm sorry?
It happened this series. How many times this series have we had a tie game? Oh, hopefully we can just fight to get to overtime. Sometimes we show effort. Here's the thing. I thought there were games where we had stretches where we outplayed them, games where we got stretches where we got outplayed. That's just the way playoff hockey is. That's the way all hockey games are. Now, I'll say this here too. To blame on our goalie or to try to cast blame on our goalie, our defense was miserable in the playoffs. Absolutely. Now, hold on, Grumpy. This is something that is going to mean something more to Phil than it will for me, and probably will for you, Grumpy old man. Now, there was PhilzFacts. What type of stat? Phil likes to use the Corsi, the analytics, that type of stuff, right, Grumpy?
Unless it doesn't prove his point.
No,
then he'll pick like a 6 minute, 15-second time frame to kind of look at this.
Somebody sent this to me before we even knew Phil's was coming on here today.
Oh, boy.
This is the 5-on-5 failed play per game defenseman first round. It sounds like a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo for everybody, but you're going to see here the failed zone entries, the failed zone exits, the failed defensive puck zone retrievals. You'll see that 4 Islander defensemen are the top 5 defensemen in this category. So not clearing the zone, not being able to enter the zone, and not being able to retrieve the puck when they dump the puck in. We were not doing a good job defensively. It's as simple as that. I mean, I'm sure you'll speak to it too, Phil. Defensively, we didn't do a good job, and we have to expect just to make the postseason, we had to have Sorokin play like an all-star, and we had to do that too to even have a chance against any team we played.
Right. No, they did not do any of this well. I mean, anyone watching would realize that if they had better puck transporters on the back end, it would have made things easier. But what they did do is they did limit high danger chances pretty well. Relative to other series, the Islanders had a very low amount of surrendered high danger chances at 5-on-5. Through game 4, the Islanders at 5-on-5 had more high danger chances than the Carolina. I didn't check what it was after game 6, but for the first 4 games, we were out chancing them at 5-on-5. The power play, as we all know, was a huge issue. But yeah, I mean, against an aggressive forechecking team where they clog the neutral zone very well, they make entries very difficult, not only on defensemen, but on forwards too. I'm sure I think they had one of these that they displayed for forwards as well. And Matt Barzell, who's usually really good at carrying the puck in, was nowhere to be found in terms of the leaderboard with controlled exits and control entries. They're a tough opponent, and you're going to see when they post this for the second round, you're going to see the bottom half of the list is going to be occupied by New Jersey Devils in the same way, because Carolina does make it hard with their speed.
I bet you we're not going to see this put on Phil's Twitter feed, because it doesn't push his narrative of how bad Noah Dobson is and how good all the rest of the marginal Islander defensemen are.
We did see that Noah Dobson, out of the 4 defensemen who played the most games, we saw that he had the best numbers.
This is how Phil.
Aho and Romanov were both ahead of him.
This is how Phil.
Romanov only played so many games, so his numbers were going to be lower.
Aho was way ahead of him, though.
Sebastian Aho played limited minutes in those games.
This is the way Phil would put it.
Again, these are rates. These aren't raw numbers. These are rates.
Just put up for a second. This is how Phil would post it on his feed. Tweet this: Noah Dobson was in the bottom 5 in 5 versus 5 plays.
These are plays.
Defensemen. He wouldn't say who the top 4 are. 3 of the Islanders. He would just say Noah Dobson's so bad he was in bottom 5 in this particular thing, because that's what
I'll say this though. I'm surprised to see Morgan Riley and Mikhail Sergachev there, because those guys are good puck moving defensemen.
Yeah, these are failed attempts per game. So Aho playing less and Romanov not playing.
No. It doesn't matter. This is a rate. The volume doesn't matter. These are rates.
Failed plays per game. Yep, per game. So again, if you're getting sheltered minutes and you're paying less minutes, you're going to be on the ice less to make those mistakes. No?
I don't think he played much less than Dobson, though. I don't think he did.
I thought Aho played less, but maybe he didn't.
I know, because in Game 5, Dobson was benched for the last 10 minutes.
Was he really?
He was. Yep. The last 10 minutes, he didn't take. After Aho scored the goal to make it 3-2, Lane did not play Dobson for the rest of the night because he didn't clear the front of the net.
He should have sat the whole defense score.
If
you're gonna bench you gotta bench everybody because they were miserable. The whole team was miserable.
That is nice to see Noah Dobson. You're looking at these failed attempts. Adam Pelech.
Dobson was 4th on the team, and ice time was Pelech 23:47. Boy, that was bad. Pulak 23:28, Mayfield 21:26, and Dobson 20:11. And then you had Aho was 15:47.
All right, I got the 5-on-5 ice time. Pulak 20:22, Pelech 18:43, Mayfield 16:47, Dobson 15:54, Romanov 15:15, Aho, you're right, 12:48. So he had 3 more minutes per night than Dobson. But again, the real reason why you see Aho so much higher is because he is probably the best puck transporter they have on the back end.
And long story short, the reason I brought it up is the entire defense struggled across the board. And I'm like, to try to put any sort of blame or onus on our goalie, I think is just I've said this before on the show. It's like blaming Kelly Leak from Bad News Bears. The guy
I think in a 1-0 game where you lose 1-0, sure. Even if you lose 2-1, I don't think it's unfair to say in a game where he gave up a really, really awful second goal, and then the team rallied and took control of that game to score 3 straight, to then give up another terrible goal. I don't think it's unfair to point out that if Sorokin was at the top of his game in Game 2, that they win, which isn't to say that Sorokin's bad. Of course he's not bad. You could say the same thing about Vasilevsky. Vezina winner, Cup winner, Stanley Cup champion. The bottom line is he had a shitburger of a series, and Vasilevsky is the only reason why Tampa lost. But he got them Stanley Cups, and if not for him, they wouldn't be champions. All that's true. But another truth and reality is that he was objectively awful in that series.
To try to compare, and Vasilevsky was miserable.
Terrible.
He's the reason why they didn't advance. That and injuries, right? To try to say that Sorokin was...
No, it wasn't that and injuries. It was that. It was literally that.
I think injuries hurt too. But to say that they were on the same playing field, Sorokin posted a 924 save percentage in the postseason this year. To think that we're pointing fingers, or we're looking to point the finger, we're saying, which one of these mother effers can we point the finger at as to why our team wasn't talented enough, or why we didn't win games? The goalie who posted a 924 save percentage.
What was his save percentage in game 2?
Let's just say he played more than one game. He played game 1, game 2, game 3,
every game
4,
is a
game
unique
5, and
event.
game 6.
Every game is
every single one of them. I'm going to look at the entire series because in the entire series, 924.
It doesn't matter. What was his save percentage in game 2? Every game is a unique event. Okay. The Devils, listen, the Devils were held to 1 goal in 3 separate games versus the Rangers. You know why it doesn't matter? Because in the other 4, their goaltender only gave up 2 goals. So in 3 games, they gave up 15 goals. And in the other 4 games, they gave up a total of 2 goals. So their cumulative save percentage is going to be terrible. But the bottom line is, when every single game is a unique event, it doesn't matter what your cumulative save percentage is if individual games you're losing.
So like when the Islanders couldn't close out that last game, game 6 at home, a game they should win, where you get a 951 save percentage. Why are we not blaming every single motherfucker who skated up out there?
A lot of people should be
blaming. Watch your mouth.
Why were we not blaming every other guy out there who skated laced up that wasn't Sorokin? Hey,
100%.
If the team would have done well, there we go. That's 7 games.
I can very easily throw Sorokin in there when you're giving up a goal from below the goal line.
You're not throwing any of the other players in there, though. That's
I am throwing all of them in there. They all did not play well enough in that game, and Sorokin did not make the key save he needed to make to keep that game alive. Both things are true.
Okay.
Both things are true.
In game 2, we scored 3 goals, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Every one of those should have been stopped. That should have been a shutout. That should have been
that's irrelevant. That's completely
it's not irrelevant
though.
Because if they score 1 good goal, that game should have been a shutout. Antti Ranta was miserable. He was miserable in that season. He's a backup. We couldn't beat a team playing a backup goalie with 3 injured forwards. Couldn't do it. You want to know why, Phil? Because Carolina owns us. Carolina's too tough for us. Their style kills us. We don't beat Carolina.
It's like your WWE promoter right now.
Let me tell you something. When they look at the schedule to start the year, they circle wins, right? Okay, what are winnable games? Islanders, they're all winnable. Whoop, 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 whoop. You want to know what's like? They're like the Russian national team from the 1970s, and we're like Latvia when we play Carolina. There is no shot we're beating Carolina. Next year, guess what? We're not beating Carolina then either. Every time we play them, we're prohibitive underdogs against Carolina. Why? Because Carolina's style is death for us. They beat us missing 3 of their top 6 forwards, 3, and a backup goalie, and still handled us. I never, ever, ever, ever felt we were in that series, ever. My prediction was the middle of the year, the beginning of the year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I saw this. I said, if we play Carolina playoffs, we're getting beat. Every time we play Carolina playoffs, we get beat. When we play them in the regular season, we get beat. Think about that, Phil. 4 times in the last 20 games. 4 out of 20.
That's a lot.
You know what they call that? That's a trend. Yes, my friend, a trend.
just an irrelevant argument.
It's not an irrelevant argument.
Completely irrelevant. Well, he should be giving up awful goals from 35 feet out on deflections because we can't beat Carolina.
I know Ranta did that. I know he did that. But you know what? We play who we get to play.
How are you expecting him to if he doesn't see the puck and our defenseman bats it on net?
Oh my God!
Expecting from him,
that thing hung up like a punt, in football. How do you not see the puck?
Because when you
watch that clip again, that goal cannot go in. It hangs in air for like 2 seconds. Everyone sees it? Literally, everyone saw the puck. He was snoozing. He was off his angle, and he let it go through. It was a terrible goal. That puck hung up there forever.
He wasn't off his ankle.
It was a fluke.
He was completely off his ankle.
You're not going to see me blame a goalie where they let in some fluky goals. Every single goalie goes down to the freaking ice when the guy's skating in that same exact. We've pulled it up on the show before. Every single goalie goes down to stop that shot or stop a pass that could hit off a skate and go and trickle in the net. So all the goalies go down. The fact that it hit his helmet.
I'm going to draw a comparison here. Another sporting event, one that I was at, Super Bowl 30. 38. Carolina Panthers, New England Patriots. The Carolina Panthers make a furious comeback. They tie the game up at 29. They kick the ball. John Casey kicks the ball out of bounds. John Casey, all-time kicker for the Carolina Panthers. Phenomenal kicker. Kicks the ball out of bounds. Patriots get the ball at the 40. You want to know what has to happen? Tom Brady, of course, drives him down the field, even though there were a couple of penalties.
Can't make a damn show with
No.
that.
Okay, but here's the thing. Tom Brady was the Carolina Panthers. It didn't matter what Sorokin did. Tom Brady, a.k.a. the Carolina Panthers, were going to beat the Islanders because they're just better. They're just better. You know how I know? Look at the standings. Where do we come in? Do we come in behind them every single year? We play them, we lose to them every single year. They're better than we are. I don't care what you say, Phil. You could do any type of mumbo jumbo you want to. Take some slide rule to figure out if this quarter inch went in, we would have won. We could have done this. But you know what? We didn't, and we don't because we don't beat Carolina.
I don't think you're giving Sorokin enough credit. But yeah, play the goal.
I gave Ronta too much. Can we see the Ronta goals? Can we see those?
Again, we know Ronta sucks. That's not the point. If you want to compare Sorokin to Ronta, then yeah, we'll pay Sorokin $2 million on
our forward group should have generated a whole hell of a lot more shots and opportunities on a really weak and vulnerable goalie, is what my point is.
Play the clip. Let's take a look.
We're just going to ignore that, though. That's fine.
No, I'm not ignoring that. Yes, it would have been great to score more.
No. Every single one of these forwards. Every single one of these
forwards. Game 2, did they have enough goals in game 2 to win? The answer is yes.
I got to say, I'm so glad that we're not going to review this whole series like we said we weren't. And here the two of you are squabbling. I've heard you personally squabble about this about 3 or 4 times in the last week and a half, by the way.
Let's watch it.
Burns and Aho intercepts. Can't help but think that this sustained penalty kill is giving confidence to the Island.
Oh, he didn't see it.
They
score. He didn't see it.
I don't care. You cannot give that up.
He didn't see it.
That thing is from too far out. Look at where he is. This guy, he's all the way. Look at him. Look where he's standing. And then he moves far.
Look at his eyes. His eyes are looking for the puck behind the net.
He didn't see
the puck. His eyes are moving to the puck behind the net because the puck is going around the boards.
Again,
whose fault is it? The guy who's freaking batting on our net like a fucking baseball bat. That's whose fault it is.
This puck hangs in the air for such a long time. Look, Palmieri's looking at the puck the whole time. Look at Palmieri. He's like, okay, there's the puck. There's the puck. Sorokin keeps moving to his left. It's incredible. He's not, because he's not watching the puck. He's watching the player. He's not watching the puck. That is why. He has his eyes on Nason.
Nosen dumps the puck in, and guess what? He's starting to look in the corner because he knows that's what's going.
No, Nason does not dump the puck in. That puck is elevated, and Aho bats it. How are you not following the puck there? All Sorokin is looking at is Natchez.
Well, I think here's an explanation why you didn't see the puck, Phil. And you said he was looking for the offensive player Natchez. It's because the defensemen surely weren't looking at their Natchez. So I mean, he figures he's got to stop pucks. Track the forwards, everything.
No, you have Pulock looking at Natchez, and then Pulock sees the puck and pulls off of Natchez because the puck is no longer going there. Pulock knows exactly where this puck is. He's going toward Natchez. The puck gets batted, and watch how Pulock will peel off.
Can I ask you a question? What's the one rule in hockey? They say when you're in a defensive zone, not to throw the puck towards the middle of the net, not to throw the puck towards the middle of the ice.
He's not trying to throw the puck to the middle of the ice. He's trying to prevent his dump in.
Okay, well, why is he doing that? Why is Sebastian Aho batting this puck across ice like this if he knows and trusts his partner, Ryan Pulock, is going to be covering his man? There's Nosen, there's Aho's man, and there's Natchez, and there's Pulock's man. There's nobody else there. Why is Sebastian Aho carrying no blame for this?
That's
for a puck that he didn't see.
You want to blame Aho, sure, blame Aho, but you cannot say that Sorokin is blameless here when every single person on the ice clearly knows exactly where this puck is.
I'm saying multiple people deserve blame, and to say that I'm going to single it out and make it the goalie who's the best player on our team every single time, it's just like I just feel like it's unfair.
If you want to excuse that goal, that's fine. To me, that can't go in. And then when they get all those goals back for you and add to it and take the lead late in the third, and then 2 shifts later, You duck down and give up a goal from below the goal line to a left-handed shot from below the net. I'm sorry.
Good shot. Really good shot.
It was a good shot.
I mean, talk about a beautiful shot. That's it.
Steal the post off.
Okay.
Well, you're going down and you're making your head the target. He goes down. He goes all the way down. It's like, banks it into the net.
I'd love to talk about the past, but here's the thing.
Let's
I can talk about the future.
I'll be back in 1 second, guys. I'll be back in 1 second. But we'll get to that.
Okay.
I'd love to talk about the past all night.
Sure.
Let's talk about the future.
Well,
If we play Carolina again, they're beating us.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what's happened since that time period, right? People will blame who they'll blame. That's fine. I'm going to blame the general manager personally. He assembled the team. I don't think the team has enough talent. I will say, as I mentioned earlier, I think that if we were still in a postseason, could we have given the Devils a legitimate run there? And could we maybe beat the Devils? Maybe. But here's the thing.
No.
I will say this. Even if Carolina wins the Stanley Cup, I don't want to hear any of this. Well, if we didn't play Carolina, or if this person did this or that person did this, we would have won the Stanley Cup. Because no, we would not have. I'm ready for that line of bullshit until people finally acknowledge that this team is a flawed team, just like most teams in the NHL, and we take the steps that are needed to start rectifying these issues. We will be stuck in the same spot that we are every year. And the same spot we've been the last 2 years, in a disappointing end of the season. That's where we're going to be stuck.
Yeah, 100% agreement. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're just to me.
Listen to anything I said.
Yeah, I want to move. I want to move. There's so many things to talk about.
What do you want to talk about? I just brought up a new topic for you to talk about.
Okay.
And you were not paying attention. You did that shit where you weren't paying attention. You said, I 100% agree with you. You just did that shit, Grumpy. But that's what it is.
Okay.
I don't know.
Long story short,
I just said we have issues. I said we had issues on this team that we have to change and rectify. And until people
okay.
turn me off, Grumpy.
Okay. What can you possibly do? There's nothing we can do right now to make this team better. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Nothing to do to make this team better.
You could try to make the team better in the short term, but it's not going to make it better enough to where you can win a cup. And that's the point that I've always been trying to make.
I don't even see us having a shot to make the playoffs next year. We're not making the playoffs next year.
I think we make the postseason next year, but we're still in the same spot. We're not a team. We're not a team that is a one player away or coaching change away from being a Stanley Cup contender. We're just not.
We're just not good enough until we get better. And it's going to be a long process because the GM has failed. He's failed in his stewardship of the organization. Absolutely. He came when he first came in here, he did what he needed to do. He made the Islanders relevant again. He gave them cachet in the league just because he's Lou Lamoriello, right? That's his selling thing. I'm Lou Lamoriello. What has he done? Really? Has he brought any difference makers into this team in 5 years? No, absolutely not.
He's brought other players in. They're more
difference makers. Because you're talking about the same ham and eggers who were terrible under Jack Crapuano. Same ham and eggers, same ones. That was the core of your team.
Yeah.
I mean, right? Those are just facts. All right. Zach Parise, is he a core member of your team? Nope.
No, I wouldn't say so.
F-, is he a core member of your team? Nope. Matt Martin, core member of the team? Nope. Pierre Engvall, core member of the team? Absolutely freaking not.
I hope so.
Absolutely not.
That's the guy you build around.
Is Romanov a core member of the team?
Romanov should be a core member of the team.
He's not. He's not.
Yeah.
He will be.
Well, that's right. If we get rid of everybody else, if he's the last man standing, he will be a core member of the team.
No,
right now,
me, the core of the team is mostly the defense.
He's right. He's the fourth best defenseman on this team.
Sure, I agree with that.
I figure Mayfield's going to be gone. He's fourth best defenseman.
Sure. I don't
Defensively,
disagree with that.
he's the third best.
If you're looking at core members of this team, Sorokin, I guess Pulak, Pelican, Dobson.
Sure.
Barzal, Horvat, Nelson. That's
the
it.
league.
That's it.
Lee, unfortunately, is a core member of this team.
No, he's not. No, he's not. No, he's
yes,
not.
he is.
He's not a core member. He's still on the team. He's a captain. He's not a core member anymore. You could lose him tomorrow. It makes no difference. Absolutely no difference. Just because he's been here forever does not make him a core member anymore. It's like saying Cal Clutterbuck is a core member of the team because he's been here forever and he's a leader type. He's not. They're not. Fourth line, sorry. You're on the fourth line. You are automatically disqualified for being a core member of the team. Third line, see you later. Nope. You're talking about some guys. You're talking about 3 defensemen, a goalie, and 3 forwards who, if you say we can get rid of everybody else and bring in just a whole new group of guys, and we're pretty much going to be the same team because those are our core guys. And I just don't think the core is good enough. Just not.
I'll tell you this. The one thing I'm concerned about, and I wanted to talk about, it kind of leads up. There's been a lot of silence out of the Islanders camp this year at the end of the season. And it's one of these items, too, to where it makes you kind of wonder what's going on. There's a lot of comments early on about, is Lou going to be here? Is Lane Lambert going to be here? What's going on? And, to be honest, the silence it speaks for itself. This is not something usually the Islanders do. They don't remain silent for a week and a half, or who knows how long the silence will continue. I have to assume there's some sort of change or mix up that's going on. And from that standpoint, that's good. I don't think we're just a head coach away from winning a Stanley Cup, though. I hope there's some change in the mantra and the philosophy of the team, though.
Phil, do you want to touch on it, or you want me to give my opinion first?
You can give your opinion because I need to bring my wife a spoon anyways. So I will let you give your opinion.
Here's the way I look at it, right? When the Islanders were winning and making the playoffs, we were eliminated from the playoffs, and you heard from the coach/GM immediately after the season. As soon as the guys did their exit interviews, you heard, from the coach and the general manager on the state of the team. Last year, it took a week after we were eliminated, when we didn't make the playoffs, 7 days to the day. And then finally Lamoriello talks, and he says we fired Barry Trotz and are hiring Lane Lambert. Now we've gone, 8-9 days since we were eliminated from the playoffs?
Sure.
You haven't heard from anyone in management. So what does it mean? Does it mean that the coach is gone? Does it mean the GM is gone? I just find it. Here's the thing. I think since they didn't say anything after the year, someone is leaving.
I was about to say, the Islanders were eliminated on April 28th. I mean, so this Friday, that
2
week,
weeks.
2 weeks. Today is Wednesday. I don't know. I have to feel like something is going on. There is, we're at a spot to where I think there's going to be some sort of change and mix up. What it is, I don't think anybody knows. There has to be some sort of change or mix up to be quiet almost now for 2 weeks. The longer it goes, the more and more likely I think that there's going to be some sort of significant change. I think significant change is needed, and I'll be honest with you, I just hope it's choosing the right path. I hope it's not, oh, well, the general manager who's win now, maybe he's lost it. We just need another general manager who's win now. It's still not acknowledging the flaws of the team to have a win now approach is the unfortunate thing, Grump.
I 100% agree. You need to change direction of the team. Just to put another guy who says, well, hey, this team is good enough. Honestly, I don't know how anyone can, with a straight face say this team is good enough to contend for a Stanley Cup when your forward group averages over 30 years old of age. I don't see how anyone could possibly say that. I mean, if you bring in a general manager, let's say you bring in a new GM, it can't be somebody who just says, hey, I love this core group of guys. We're going to stick with them. It has to be someone who's going to clean house.
And this is one of these things, too, where I think, number one, got to be change. I think there is change coming. I don't think it's going to be Chris Lamoriello. People are like, oh, maybe it's Chris. It would have been done quicker. I feel like if it was Chris Lamoriello selected, would have been done in a quicker fashion. So I do think that there is significant change coming. I hope it's the right change, but change needs to happen.
I mean,
Go
we were
ahead,
discussing
Phil.
this before. When you say we need a clean house, I'm not talking about management. I'm talking about the roster. When you're saying we need to, get rid of this core, get rid of this group, refresh the roster. I just want to get an understanding from your guys' perspective what you mean by that. Who stays, who goes, and when you're swapping out these pieces, what's the ultimate goal here? Is it that you want to get pieces for now in return? Are you specifically looking at futures and selling off for the sake of strictly draft capital and prospects, or is the plan to kind of retool with comparable type players?
For me, it's prospects and draft picks.
Okay. And who is leaving the organization in your wishful scenario to facilitate that?
I think guys who are movable. I think you can move Anders Lee if you eat half a salary. I think someone will take him if you eat half a salary.
Second round pick, let's just say.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
You can move. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. They're not going to do it, but who are the Islanders have the most value? Seriously, the most value.
Ilya Sorokin's number one.
They're not moving.
Sure.
They're not going to move him. I agree. They're not moving the goalie. They're also not moving Brock Nelson, but we're just speaking in terms of what your vision would be.
Right. Brock Nelson could probably get you at least a first and a second, maybe 2 1s.
He'll get you 2 1s.
What I told someone who asked me about that, I would say similar value to Bo Horvat.
Yeah. Okay.
He's much better than Bo Horvat is.
Okay, but yeah, you're talking about a guy who only has 2 more years left and who's going to be 32 years old versus Bo Horvat, who was 27 at the time of the trade. It's different. I would say
Bo Horvat, you knew was going to get a huge contract extension, though.
Yeah, but he's much younger. He's 4 years younger than him.
You've got 2 years of cost certainty at what, 5 million, 6 million? What is
6 million?
$6
You're basically renting Brock for an extra year than you would be if you traded for him a year after. So you're getting 2 runs of Brock Nelson here.
Sure. 2 full years of Brock Nelson.
Mm-hmm. So if you get a first round pick, a prospect, and a young player, because I don't want old players, young player with some upside that maybe is in a situation where he needs a change of scenery. I have no problem at all with that. And my reasoning is by the time the Islanders are good again, Brock Nelson's going to be long gone. Long gone.
When do you think that window of when they're going to be good again is?
It depends on when they start this process.
And depends
on today. Because I'm just going to give you 2 things to consider.
4 to 5 years.
Number one, I'm going to give you the clippings of the Matt Barzal exit interview on locker room cleanout day, where his dissatisfaction with the fact that they were not competitive enough during the regular season to have more certainty at around January, February time that they were going to be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Clearly, he's here. He signed that extension because he wants to compete. He wants to win. Nothing about that interview would lead any of us to believe that he has any remote interest in being part of a rebuild. Right? Number 2, if you're talking about something with an extended timeline over here, then you also seriously need to consider as to whether or not Sorokin is going to be a part of that, or if rather than giving a guy who's due his new deal at 29, he's going to be 29 when they sign him, when that new deal kicks in, right? He's turning 28 in a couple months. Right now is when you do the extension a year ahead because you don't want to have a lame duck goalie over here. If you're going to do this rebuild, when in that time frame do you envision Sorokin? When you in Sorokin's time frame do you envision the team will be good enough?
34, 35 years old.
34, 35,
35 years old.
Yeah. No,
Does that make sense to keep him then?
It depends. It depends on how aggressive you are, and if you make the right moves.
Well, I mean, a lot of teams make the right moves, but these things they don't just pop up overnight. It takes time. If you look at the New Jersey Devils, I mean, you're talking about a team that hit as close to an inside straight with their draft picks as you can possibly get. 2 number 1 overall picks, who are Hischier and Hughes, both top line caliber centers. They got at least one number 2 overall pick. They hit on Dawson Mercer pretty early in the first round also, right? That's one side of it. That's, to me, the Devils, and it took, 7 years for them to get to the playoffs, pretty much a perfectly executed rebuild. If the Rangers were in the same scenario as the Devils and didn't have the good fortune of Panarin popping in and Fox popping in because they wanted to be there. I mean, the other way it could go is drafting Kakko, Lafreniere, Lias Anderson, and Vitaly Kravtsov with your top 10 picks. It can go that way. We've seen it. I mean, we're Islander fans. We've seen that too. So there is no certainty as to when your new window opens up, but you have to bake in at least 5 years minimum.
Yep. Okay. That's
so
fine.
Does keeping Sorokin make sense then?
I say yes. You don't have to move him right away. You don't have to move him right away.
Listen, if the goal is rebuild and getting competitive pieces, right? And we think that Sorokin's top 5 goalie. He is, right? He is going to keep you at around the 8 to 12 mark in the draft. If you keep Sorokin, if you keep Barzal, if you keep Dobson, there's no certainty in the draft at that level. If you're going to tank, do it right like Chicago and get Bedard. They traded really good pieces. They traded DeBrincat. They traded Doc. Who else did they trade this summer? They traded everyone.
The Devils also made the postseason in 2018.
No,
so
2017.
2018, 2017,
2018. But again, a little bit of an anomaly. They had a ridiculous year from Taylor Hall.
That slows down the rebuild when you say we're going to draft 17th when our team has,
that's when they got Mercer. I think was 17th.
No, Ty Smith.
No. Who did they get that year?
Ty Smith.
They finished. But again, Ty Smith is a piece that they used to accelerate the rebuild by getting Marino.
Yep, and then they've got Jack Hughes the year after.
I don't think that really slowed anything down, right? Okay, let's just say for argument's sake, the Devils would have picked 11th that year versus 17th. So who went 11th? Wallstrom went 11th.
Let me ask you this though. Let's say we're talking about Sorokin, right?
Mm-hmm.
The biggest issue for the Devils, they don't have a goalie. That's the biggest issue for them. And let's look at that. The Devils now are in a position where if I'm a Devils fan, I am freaking I'm a pig in shit. I'm so unbelievably happy with we finally saw the rebuild through. We waited. We had one little anomaly of a postseason year, but we saw what the rebuild is. Now we've got guys like Nemec who aren't even on the team yet. We've got a young foundation.
Hughes who just really joined in the playoffs.
Yeah, I was about to say Hughes. Yeah, I was about to say he was drafted the year before, I think 4th overall. He now is just coming in. You have so many young pieces where you're thinking to yourself, great, I can use this for either one or two reasons. I can either, if we feel like they're one of the solution pieces, they're going to find a spot in an everyday lineup. And if we feel like they're not, we're going to trade away a young guy who has value, who is one of those early draft selections, and for a deadline acquisition to make ourselves a real cup contender. If you're a Devils fan, you've got to be excited right now. But what they have to do, they had to go through a time period of being at the bottom, being just drowned under the water. And now they're above that. They've seen the light at the end of the tunnel, and things are going to be happy and sunshiny for them for years to come. If they get a goalie, it solves all the issues. But the Islanders are at a spot to where we are just still trying to grasp on to the light that's fading. Let it go. Let the rebirth of the Phoenix begin.
Look at what the Kings did, how they did their rebuild. They kept a few core pieces.
Yep.
They kept Dustin Brown, Kopitar, Doughty, Quick. They kept a few core guys, and they did the full rebuild.
And when Quick was at the end,
they moved him.
See you later.
That's what
that was at the very. They didn't get anything for Quick though.
Right. I mean, he was finished. But here's the thing: you have to get Sorokin locked up. And you mentioned how Barzal wants to compete. Okay, it doesn't matter. You've signed a long-term deal. You're here. You're not going anywhere. You might not be happy about it, but you know what? You can build around that. You need to start moving off the guys who are over 30 and get whatever assets you can so you can start the rebuild.
And you look at our division, let you respond to this too. Our division is a team where you've got a lot of teams who have had these rebuilds and are exiting rebuilds, and you're going to have a lot of really tough teams for the future to come. But I'm sorry, Phil, I'll let you respond.
My only comment on the Devils was going to be, well, two things. First of all, again, if you're going to use them as an example, number one, it took 6 years for them to get from point A to point B, right? And that would mean Sorokin's 35. So still a relevant question as to whether or not Sorokin can be part of this rebuild. And number two, as I mentioned before, the Devils, they hit on everything perfectly because they got 2 number 1 picks, right? If you take out Hughes and Hischier, right, and you substitute it with Kako and whomever. I mean, it's a completely different story. So if you want the Islanders to follow the path of the Devils, then ideally you'd want them to be a miserable, awful team. For the Kings, the guys who are getting it done for the Kings aren't even the guys who they picked up in the draft, right? Turcotte's not even here. Byfield, he's okay. He's not a difference maker at all.
He's good against us. It's the only team he seems to score against is us.
He didn't score against us this year, did he?
I think he did.
No, he didn't. 2 years ago he did, but one of them wasn't a goal. One of them was a face-off that we won, and it went right. Pellick, I think, batted it right into our own net. Wow. So he didn't even get on it, but he lined up for the face-off, so they have to award it to somebody.
Oh, there you go.
So that was one of his 2 goals. The other one was a really nice wrist shot. Really nice wrist shot. But he's not a difference maker. The guys, they've made some shrewd trades. They traded futures for Fiala. They traded futures for Arvidsson. So 2 top 6 forwards were brought in via trade. That's not a route that the Devils really pursued. The Devils really kept all their draft capital. And they didn't need to really make upgrades to their top 6. They ended up signing Palat, I guess, kind of as all right, we need a veteran Stanley Cup winner in the locker room who's going to help out with some of these young guys and show them the way, right? They took on Dougie Hamilton because they had infinite amounts of cap space, and Dougie Hamilton was young enough where, all right, that could be a core piece of this rebuild, and he's going to be good for the next 6-7 years. So let's sign him, because why not? But again, I ask you, how do you figure a scenario where keeping Sorokin makes sense if the goal is to get the highest draft pick possible and to get through this in a 5 to 7 year window?
I don't think the goal has to be to get the highest draft pick possible. I think you could still do it. And the Kings, right? You're right. They were able to trade for players. They were able to use draft capital. They were able to use prospects they drafted to trade for guys that are young that make an immediate impact, like Fiala, right? A guy that they were able to pick up for a pittance, in my opinion, because they had so many young players that they had been drafting.
Really good. I wouldn't call that a pittance.
You said what? I'm sorry?
Faber is a really good player who they gave up for Fiala.
They didn't
they brought him up to the playoffs. Yeah, he looked fantastic.
Didn't hardly give up anything to get Arvidsson, though. Was it a 4th round pick?
The 2nd and a 3rd, I believe.
Okay, I thought it was a 4th.
It was 2 draft picks.
But
he was coming off of a pretty down year.
There are different ways to do it. It's not just one way or another. I mean, here's the thing.
But again, every way more or less takes a pretty significant amount of time.
Absolutely.
You could look at the Sabres, they're in year 12. You could and they've cycled through really, really good players like Jack Eichel, for example, right? To waste the Eichel era was, I don't think anyone expected that to happen, where like 0 postseason appearances with that. And a lot of that, as we know now, had to do with coaching, right? Some of these guys who were really good now, like Tage Thompson, looked terrible under Kruger or whatever the hell that guy's name was.
The soccer coach.
Yeah, and Skinner looked terrible, right? And now these guys look fantastic. And you're seeing Alex Tuck playing the best hockey of his career. So, they got it right with the coach. Coaching does matter, especially when you're talking about young players who need to be put in a position to succeed. But it's very rare that you can just hop into a Rangers situation where you turn the thing around in 3 years, is what I'll say.
I agree. I agree, but I don't think – what's the purpose of trying to chase something you're never going to get because you have no more assets to trade? Your team isn't that good.
Why not trade Sorokin?
Because it's not. You can trade him at any time.
Long term,
you need to sign him long term.
You cannot trade him at any time. If you sign him long term, and you want to trade him in 3 years from now, if his play declines at the age of 31, you can't just trade a guy.
That's a lot of ifs and buts.
That's not a lot of ifs and buts. Sergei Bobrovsky started falling off at 31 also. Yeah, right after he signed that contract, 7 years, $10 million. You think he had any market the year after? He didn't. And he was a 2-time Vezina winner.
Yeah, but everyone knew that was a bad contract when he signed it. Everyone knew.
He was 30 years old. Why?
Did you think that was a good deal when they signed it?
No, he didn't. And I don't think any goalie at that age signing that big of a contract. Igor Shesterkin, when he's 30 years old, he's going to be due a new deal. The Rangers are going to give him $9.5 to $10 million because he has a Vezina and he's been really good. Is that going to be a good contract? No. Is it going to be portable a year or two into his contract for positive value? No. If they traded him before they signed that contract, would they get a mint for him? Yes, they would. the best time to cash in on Sorokin, if you're going to trade him, is now.
Well,
there is no better time.
You might as well move everybody off the team. That Barzell,
I agree.
Horvat.
I'm not disagreeing. Yes, if you want to go for the rebuild angle, trade Nelson and trade Pollock and Pellick and all these players. I was talking to you about this before. Once you move those players, you have to move Sorokin and you have to move Barzell. I agree.
They're not. I mean, they're not going to do that.
We're aware they're not trading. They're not doing any of this. We're just kind of saying the hypothetical route of what your vision of the team should be.
My first vision, new general manager.
Okay.
First vision. That because it won't happen with an old GM. That's first thing. And it's got to be a young GM. And he's got to come in here and just say, you know what? I'm looking at birth certificates. That's the first thing I'm looking at. You're born in 93 or before. We don't need you. Anders Lee, first thing I'm doing, I'm stripping you of the C. Number one, you're no longer captain. If you have and here's the thing, you're going to be playing on the third line, maybe the fourth line. I said, are you fine with that? Because we can move your ass, but you're not part of we don't want you to be the leader of this team anymore. We're moving you. And if you want to stay, great. You're going to get diminished ice time. You might even ride the bus down in the minors. It doesn't matter. You're not going to be a big member of this team anymore. And you're not captain. You're not an assistant. Matt Barzell is captain. When you look at the comments after the season, Matt Barzell is captain material. Sure. Anders Lee, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Agreed.
And then Bo Horvat, you can be the assistant, even though, your biggest thing is moving your family. That was a big traumatic experience for you.
That was hard to believe that he had that line of shit to say on that. I think and thanks Jake for sending that to us too, Miss Pessimisticking. There's no excuses for my poor play, but then goes on about how tough it was moving his family and his kids. I'm like, dude.
He learned from Lou Lamoriello. We had no excuses. Look, we had no excuses last year.
On me, but
you know what? We played 13 games straight on the road to start the season, and we had COVID. We're not making excuses. These are just facts. Stop. Just stop.
What did you think of that?
Good enough because you're a shitty general manager and you put together a shitty team, and that's why your team sucks.
I want to hear what your comments are on the Bo Horvat. What did you think?
I didn't even see the Bo Horvat comments. I don't know. I'm not even sure what you're talking about.
I'll pull this up here. Give me a sec. But
watch out, Phil. He'll pull it up. He's like you.
No. If you haven't heard it, then I want him to be able to hear it because you did a good job of pulling this here for us.
And I wanted Bo Horvat. The more I listen to him talk and the comments he makes, I'm like, oh, geez, I'm stunned he signed the contract right away. I mean, you waste all that time and trying to be a free agent, and you're traded to a below average team has no future, and all you care about is getting that extra 8th year. Ooh, I'm worried about if he fits right in with the cul-de-sac crew. Slides right in there. Maybe he could take over Anders Lee's house when he's jettisoned.
He wanted to play with Barzell.
He didn't talk about playing with Barzell.
He did.
He talked about.
He talked a lot about playing with Barzell.
He keeps talking about how bad it was in Vancouver, even though he wanted to stay there, about moving. Oh, do you have it pulled up here, TJ?
That's what that is, Grumpy. Yep. Right. Let's listen to it.
And not getting that production that he was getting earlier in the season.
Next year, like you said, you got 8 years ahead of you. Mm-hmm. How much more comfortable will it be starting the season?
I think a lot. It's like I said, it was a lot this year. I'm not gonna lie, mentally, especially just kind of not knowing what was going to happen, not knowing where I was going to be, how my family was going to get here, and then when everything kind of happened, it just kind of it was just a big tidal wave of emotions and everything going on, moving the family and living situations and stuff. I mean, I'm not trying to make excuses by any means, but it was a lot this year on myself and the family, and obviously would have liked to score more goals, of course, and I definitely hold myself to a high standard and hold myself accountable and expect a lot out of myself, and and when the goals did dry up, it was frustrating, but again, it's just something that I think it's going to make me better in the long run, mentally and as a player. So again, I'm just looking forward to getting settled, moving into the house and getting my family settled as well, right? So looking forward to that.
I'll tell you that much. I don't like a guy who's saying at the end of the year when they're having interviews, "Oh man, I'm just looking forward to getting settled in at the house, getting everything all moved in, getting everything all ready to go." Shit, man. I want to hear. I don't know. Just doesn't have the fire. My opinion doesn't have the fire.
I didn't hear anything about, I want to get out there and start working with Matt Barzell. I want to get that chemistry. It's about, I need to get the family settled. Worrying how I'm going to get my family here. Probably a plane, right? I mean, you're probably flying from Vancouver. I mean, I can help you there. It's either flying or driving. You're not going to take a boat around the continent. I mean, there's just a couple ways. I mean, how long does it take they're all kids. They're not even in school yet, right? They're not even in school yet. You have your mother-in-law, you have your mom, help with the move. How tough is that? Here's the thing. If you have a job and you move to another town, it's like, yeah, my performance is going to be really shitty, boss, for this year because, it's such a traumatic move. I'm moving from Boston to, Long Island. It's so far away. And, I'd like to perform better next year. I realized that, I only did reporting like on a 40% level from what's expected. But you know what? Next year, after I'm more comfortable and my family's settled in a house, I'll be able to do better. Stop. Yeah, of course I want to score more goals. I scored 7 in 30 games. Dude, I'm sorry. He's not impressing me. He fits in with the Anders Lee guys. He just does. And I want him.
He doesn't have the drive, the mentality. He doesn't have the mentality to be a winner. Absolutely not. I am completely off the Bo Horvat train. Could not be more uninterested in a player like that before than right now. And I listened to a bit of that. The question being, hey, things started to dry up. What did you think about this year? Oh, it was so tough. Dude, you knew at the beginning of the year you were on the move because unless you knew what you and your agent were asking for, if Vancouver was not going to come and bow to that, you knew the possibility of you leaving was there. That's just a being professional athlete, my friend.
His name isn't John Tavares. His name wasn't John Tavares, where he could just say he wanted to stay and then they kept him until he walked as a free agent. It's Bo Horvat. You know what they said? Yeah, we know he wants more money than we're willing to give him. We're moving his ass. They couldn't wait to get him out the door.
Yeah, I will tell you, he should have said something like, didn't perform well. There was a lot going on. Sure, if you want to add the toughness of that, but what I'm really focused on this offseason, man, is making sure we put in a great offseason to work, build some chemistry with my line mates and come out there and really light the world on fire and produce the way that I'm expected to produce here. Not, hey, I'm just can't wait to get settled into the fucking house.
I can't wait to get into training camp. I can't wait. I'm ready now. Yes, it was this year put a sour taste in my mouth.
I can't wait to practice this offseason, right?
I got a sour taste in my mouth. I want to be better. We need to work together. We need to get better as a team. Nope, none of that from him. Comfort. It's all about comfort for him. I want to make sure I get my favorite
not a guy who's hungry.
Peanut brittle ice cream. I could sit down with the kids and eat a bowl of ice cream, watching a movie on TV. Oh, it's so great. That's what I'm worried about. Yeah, I know we play this hockey thing, but you know what? My wife, make sure the kids are okay. That's really important. That's what I like.
Phil, when you moved
sounds like freaking Josh Bailey to me.
Phil, when you moved up there to Toronto, did you have about a 5 or 6 month grace period where you could kind of get yourself ready to perform on the job, or did they say we expect immediate results?
I got to work from home. I got to work from home for 8 months.
You still were expected to have immediate results, right? Everybody.
Yeah, it was like I took off for a couple weeks to do the move.
Bo Horvat needs months. PhilzFacts only needs weeks, Grumpy.
Is it safe to say, Phil, that you're not getting paid $8.5 million a year, though?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
I mean, or even 5.5, like he was making in Vancouver. That's pretty safe. Here's the thing. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm going to make that assumption just by the cut of your shirts. They don't look like they're. Well, I'm just saying they don't look like they're silk shirts. They look like they're regular guy shirts.
Cotton. 100%.
Okay, cotton. There you go. Nice. Not even a cotton blend, just cotton. And here's the thing. I'm going to say you're probably not making 5.5. I'm not making $5.5 million a year.
I'm not making $5.5 million. No.
I'm just going to say.
You telling us our ads are not making us $5.5 million a year on this show, Grumpy? DraftKings and Raycon?
Well, they're not making us that money.
Let's jump into our ad read here, guys. Today's podcast is brought to you by DraftKings and Raycon. Light the lamp this hockey playoffs with DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, new customers can make a $5 bet and score $150 in bonus bets instantly. So you could say, I'm expecting the Toronto Maple Leafs to pull off the comeback of the century and to go ahead and come back from down 3-0 to win the series against the Florida Panthers. You can bet anything you want, really, on DraftKings. But download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the promo code THPN. New customers can make can make a $5 hockey playoff bet and score $150 in bonus bets instantly. Again, that's promo code THPN only at DraftKings Sportsbook. And now, if you have a gambling problem or you or a loved one has a gambling problem, look in the description below or the link in the description below for resources and people to speak with here. Today's podcast is also brought to you by Raycon. Grumpy's favorite headphones, Raycon. And let's face it, with coffee starting at $5, yes, even without customizations for those coffee drinkers out there, and our bank accounts somehow are always depleting, we are officially entering a dupe session. Most products do the same thing, but are priced differently, solely based on the brand name. So a good duplicate or a dupe is crucial at getting the highest quality at the best price. The only dupe that definitely shouldn't be slept on is Raycon's wireless earbuds. Raycon is a premium audio brand at a perfect price point, so you can listen to what you want when you want without breaking the bank. And Raycon's mission is to provide that, or is to prove that you shouldn't have to pay an arm and a leg to have a quality sound and essential smart tech listening features. You can get a pair and a spare and still pay less than what you would for some of the other guys from these big tech brands out there.
Oh, yeah.
And Raycon knows that in this economy, every purchase needs to be perfect. They offer a buy now and pay later options. And right now, you can pay as low as $18 at checkout. They have easy and free return guarantee. They offer 2 years of product protection insurance for just a few bucks. And hey, they offer free domestic shipping and a flat fee international shipping. They have over 55-star reviews. That's right. When you like the YouTube, we need you to type in 5-star review for Grumpy so he knows what that is. Hey, if you talk about it too, these headphones, they've got noise isolation. They've got the awareness mode that you could tap the earbud and they go ahead and they have different customizable sound profiles. You pretty much do it all. Go to buyraycon.com/THPN today to get 15% off your Raycon order. Again, that's buyraycon.com/THPN to score 15% off. Buyraycon.com/THPN.
The biggest thing about that commercial, and I don't know because I don't drink coffee, okay? But for a cup of coffee, it's $5. I mean, how much, to get a pound of coffee, how much is that? Phil, do you drink coffee?
I drink coffee.
Now, so you buy coffee in a, whatever, a little pack or whatever, fold.
No, I just do Nespresso pods.
Espresso pods.
So
you just throw something in the top of your little coffee maker, pour a little water in there, and it shits
press
out.
the button and it turns it out. Yeah, it's $1 a pod.
$1, and how many cups of coffee per pod?
One. It's one cup of coffee per pod. So I spend $1 a day on coffee, plus the milk I put in. So yeah, I'm not the kind of guy that's going to go to Starbucks and buy a $7 latte or $5 whatever.
What do you
I
think?
just do $1 a day.
What do you think about people who do something like that, Phil?
That person sounds like my wife.
I hope they've got deep pockets. That's all. I don't know.
My dad used to get Folgers coffee, and he'd get, I don't know, we get him a
coffee, and then you're doing a nickel of coffee, right?
Well, that's what it is, right? How much
nickel
that
coffee?
I mean, do you think these guys are dropping in pods? They're brewing that shit up in the back, spending $2 on a big jumbo size of coffee beans, whatever. They throw them in there. They probably get them right from Bolivia or Colombia or something on the cheap. They grind them up in the back. It costs them 2 cents, and they're making $5. They're making so much profit on that. It's scary.
Oh yeah, the margins on coffee is nuts.
Ridiculous.
Sure.
Soda, like a soda machine. I mean, They charge you what? $1, $2 for a large soda. It costs them nothing for that. Nothing.
Literally nothing. A penny. Just the water.
That's it. Water.
Water,
That's right.
a little
The
bit of
water's
syrup.
more expensive than the stuff. And I know that for a
Probably.
fact.
For sure.
Ridiculous.
Good margins in the
Very good
beverage
margins.
business. We should all get into the beverage business.
Like, you ever see the little kids selling lemonade? Man, that's scamming people. I think if I see somebody sell lemonade on my street corner, I'm going to go over and kick their little cart right over.
I thought you were about to
Listen, we did a whole case study in university back in the day on the genius of vitamin water and how by just labeling it as vitamin water, they were able to charge more money for it because they opened up to a whole demographic that actually thought it's healthy for you. Because it had all these vitamins, but really it has those vitamins, but at the end of the day, it's fruit punch. It's a sugary drink. They don't even show you. Most Coca-Cola owned products will have the Coke brand on it. They didn't even want to put the Coke labeling on it to show that this is a Coca-Cola product because that would spoil the reputation of vitamin water.
Yep.
And they're able to charge $3.50 for something that costs literally nothing to make. Amazing.
And what they were doing, they just went into the backyard. They had this little bottle. They took the hose, just filled it right up, put a little bit of food coloring in there. Oh, here you go. Woo.
Damn.
That's what it is.
I just learned something. Here I was thinking that nasty taste of a vitamin water that I used to drink years and years ago was actually offering some sort of benefit, but I guess not.
It might have some sort of benefit in it, but ultimately it's just a sugary drink.
The benefit was it took money out of your pocket and put it in theirs.
Coca-Cola.
Oh.
You don't become a blue chip company without doing something right.
That's right.
True. Let me ask you this, Phil. I want to ask you what you think this offseason should hold for the Islanders.
Should or what I think they'll do? What I think will happen. I'll tell you what I think will happen.
What should and will happen.
Okay. I'll tell you what will happen. You can write this down. They're going to get Josh Bailey's entire $5 million off the books.
Oh,
I don't know how they're going to do it, but they're going to do it. My prediction on that, just on the basis of, listen, I've never seen Josh with so much fire in an interview. He was clearly pissed. He hates Lambert. Lambert hates him. He's done with the organization. He wants to go somewhere where he's going to play.
Bridgeport.
I heard it's lovely this time of year.
I think he's going to be, whether it's Lou or a new GM, I think he's going to be presented with two options. Option one is going to be, hey, by the way, you're going to ride the bus this year, Josh. We're waiving you. You're going to go to the minors. And that's just what it's going to be. We expect you to show up to Connecticut. If you don't show up to Connecticut, you're going to be suspended without pay. You're not going to count against our cap anymore because you're failing to report. It's going to be a breach of your contract. And that's option one. Option two, I've got Verbeek from the Ducks on the line, and he's willing to take your contract on. We're compensating him in some form. I know you and your family, you guys have been on Long Island for the past decade, and your kids are in school, and you've got your nice house in Garden City or whatever. And you know what? I was talking to Verbeek, and probably I don't think he's going to play on the Ducks. I think he's going to wave you down to San Diego, and you're going to ride the bus in the AHL on the West Coast. Which option do you choose? And then I think there's a very legitimate chance that he will just go for a mutual contract termination and see if he can earn himself a PTO somewhere, or maybe a 2-year deal at a very reduced rate, maybe $1 million or $1.5 million to, offset some of the contract loss. But I really don't see a guy with that much pride, because he clearly has a lot of pride. If he could say things like, I didn't even think I was playing poorly, and I should be like, I don't see him having the pride.
Pride or delusion?
I think it's
both.
delusion.
It's both. I think it's a bit of both. I think he holds himself in fairly high regard.
Shit. No wonder we stuck for so many years.
It's both. I legitimately see a path toward a mutual termination. And it's not like this hasn't been done before. I mean, Buffalo did this with what's that big defenseman's name? Bogosian. Buffalo did it with Bogosian. Yeah. Bogosian was terrible. They drafted him, right? He was in their system the whole time.
Yeah, Zach Bogosian. I thought he was drafted by the Thrashers. Or...
maybe whatever. He was in Buffalo for a while, and then he wasn't playing well. And they said, okay, you're going to Rochester. And he's like, the hell, I'm going to Rochester. So they waived him. It was a week of back and forth. He's like, I'm not reporting. They suspended him without pay. And then he said, all right, I know I'm owed $5 million or whatever. Terminate my contract. I'm done with this. And mid-season, they terminate the contract. He signs with Tampa Bay, ends up winning the cup with them. But it's been done before. This wouldn't be the first time a player who's been waived or the threat of waiving has decided they're going to go for a mutual termination. That would be the ideal way to do it. Once you get Bailey off the books, they're either going to re-sign Mayfield or try to find a different right-handed defenseman.
Oh, God.
They are going to bring back Pierre Engvall. This is just what Phil's telling you is going to happen.
Ugh.
They're going to keep Wahlstrom. I know people are saying, oh, they're going to trade Wahlstrom. Wally doesn't have trade value that makes sense to move.
No.
There's no trade value out there. What are you going to get? A 5th-round pick for Wally? A speculative buyer? You could sign him for $1.25 million right now on a 1 or 2 year deal and see if you can salvage some of that wreckage for now. I think he's going to be in the top 12 on the team next year. I want him on the first line. They'll probably put him on the third line, but regardless, I think he's going to be there. And if Varlamov is willing to take a very hefty haircut, I think he'll be back too. But it has to be very cheap. He's going to have local bidders, though. I think the Devils are going to tap him on the shoulder, and they might offer him $3 million even.
Bye.
Sure. I'm not willing to pay Varlamov. People are saying, oh, 2.5 to 3. No, I wouldn't pay him more than $2 million. If he wants to come in at $2 million or less on a 1 or 2 year deal, fine. If he wants more than $2 million, forget about it.
That's kind of where I am too. If he wants more money, go ahead, Grumpy. Let you respond first.
So no improvements to the roster.
I think the area where you can get improvement is if you can figure out some sort of puck transporting defenseman to either fill the Mayfield role, and that would, there's no, other than Klingberg, who I think is just awful defensively, there's no real option out there in free agency. That would take a shrewd general manager move to identify a team that has a surplus. You and I we've discussed offline the idea of Jersey from the Kings because they have 4 right-handers and it's a crowded blue line there. So finding a solution on the outside where you can get a cost-controlled young player who could potentially fill that role and flip some of our futures for some of their futures, or even someone on the left side. Someone like, again, the pipe dream is Orlov because he's going to be very expensive and going to be very in demand. Can you get Gostisbehere on the cheap to replace Aho? Could be. Depends. Could you get Gustafsson? Well, we kind of turned him down after PTO stupidly, and he's gone off this year. So that was a real blunder because he looked phenomenal this year playing in Washington.
And he looked good in camp too.
He looked great in camp. That's got to go down as one of the all-time. That's got the wreckage of turning down Gustafsson in favor of Chara doing his swan song has to go down as one of the worst moves in the Lou era. Baffling.
He's got a lot of them, so it's easy to put the hits on for him.
I don't hear any significant improvements to the roster then. Nothing.
And then, but listen, you roll out that roster, okay? This year's team finished with 93 points, okay? This year's team battled more injuries than it has. And again, I'm not making excuses. I'm just giving out.
Okay.
Barzal has never. No,
go ahead, Lou. Don't give us excuses. Now read us the excuses.
No. I'm telling you, I believe, given the starting point of this season and given the injuries and everything, I think 93 points is better than any of us would have expected, all things considered. Right? If I would have told you we're going to have Josh Bailey on the first line for the first 30 games with Oliver Wahlstrom, and we're going to have Barzal missing the final 27 games of the season, and we're going to be 26 games without Pelech, and we're going to be 24 games without Palmieri, and we're going to miss Wahlstrom after game 34 for the rest of the season, and we're going to get 93 points, I think we all would have laughed. I would have. When Barzal went down, I thought it was done. But the bottom line is that group that had Bailey and Beauvillier as permanent fixtures in the top 6 for the first 40 to 45% of the season, and all that finished with 93 points. This group, I think, could finish 4 to 5 wins better than that for 101 to 103 points.
I think the one thing is the roster was terrible. It was Sorokin was the reason why we made the playoffs.
Yes.
No other reason. If we had another goalie, we don't make playoffs.
They were scoring goals down the stretch.
He was phenomenal down the stretch.
But the offense, the 5-on-5, again, and they had a record awful power play. Not a record awful, but they had. I would expect that the power play will be better next year, right? So even notwithstanding the fact that they had the second worst power play in the league, they also managed to finish with 93 points, which is why, again, Will Sorokin do a 924 again next season? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, he's been
the last 3 years, pretty much.
What?
He's had that for around the last 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, he's been, if nothing, he's been very consistent in the regular season. Very consistent, very predictable results so far in his career.
924 in the regular season and 924 in the postseason. So I'd say that's consistent.
Sounds like very consistent, Phil.
Okay, fine. He's been very consistent generally. If he ticks down to a 920 or a 918, will they still finish with 100 points in my view? I think so. I think the opening roster this year is going to be significantly better than it was last year. Significantly.
Okay. So no improvements to the team, and you expect as we're a year older, we're going to be 31 years old in the forward group, we're somehow going to get better. We're in the bottom third of the league in scoring every single year.
This group, as currently constructed, only played 30 games together. They did. You could shake your head, but the bottom line is...
I'm shaking my head because how did this team as currently constructed look against the banged-up Carolina team?
Not too good.
And how do the Devils look against the banged-up Carolina team?
We're not the Devils. They're not applicable situations. The Devils have young players
but no,
every single season.
Again,
do we have young players on this roster that are trending in the upward direction? The Devils do. We have players that are trending downwards.
You're missing the point. The point is...
No, that is the point.
No, the point is that this Carolina team, even with the injuries, is still a very, very tough opponent. They are. That's the fact of the matter. And you're going to see in the next round, they will probably beat either of Florida. Toronto survived tonight. I don't expect it to be Toronto, but if they play Florida, I expect that they will beat Florida.
Well, Florida's a team that just got hot with the hot goalies, all it is. I don't think Florida's that great of a team. I think
Florida's better than you give them credit for.
They're good. No, they're good. I think they started committing more defensively. They aren't playing as loosey-goosey as they were. You're right, Bobrovsky, again, he only gave up 2 goals tonight. This is the Leafs have only scored 8 goals in this series in 4 games.
Sounds like the Islanders.
Sounds like the big guys in their team are not producing like they should.
Tonight they came through. Nylander and Marner each had a goal tonight. So some of them came through tonight, and 2 goals happened to have been enough because Joseph Wall carried his end of the bargain for the Leafs.
Okay.
The AHL goaltender came through in the clutch. I still think the Leafs are either done, probably in 5, because I wasn't particularly impressed with them tonight. But getting back on track over here, the only point I was making with the Devils is, again, just further proof that this Carolina team isn't bad, even though they're banged up. And again, this group, from the time that they added Horvat, and then later, about 3 weeks later when they added Engvall, that group played at a 107-point pace, mostly without Barzal. If they had Barzal, would they have been better? Maybe, maybe not. They played a different style as a result of that, and that resulted in them playing better team defense, giving up fewer chances, right? That Winnipeg game that Varley had a shutout, I think they only gave up like 2 shots in the first 25 minutes or something like that. They were playing well as a unit. So now add in Barzal, who wasn't a part of that at all. Add in Wahlstrom, right? He's a young player who you hope has to get better. You have to hope that you're going to get something better from Dobson after he took a little bit of a step back this year from the year before.
4th leading scorer on the team, 50 points, 49 points.
Don't care how many points he had. He was worse this year than he was last year.
Disagree.
The bringing this back to where it actually is the question of
I just don't see how we're making any improvements to get better.
I just told you that group was good.
Let's run it back. You are now on the let's run it back crew. Is that correct? Because that's exactly what this.
I am in the group of let's try to get a defenseman and add to the group that we established on January 31st.
Let's make one adjustment and run this back. That's the group that fills in. Just to clarify, that's
not going to work. How many years of failure before you finally say, Gus, guess what, grumpy old man? We should have done what you said years ago because we'd be ready to go now.
Okay, so let's imagine this scenario. Let's just say they made no trades at the deadline. They didn't do anything. They held on to Ratu, they held on to Beauvillier, and they wrote it out. Maybe they made the playoffs. Probably not. There's no chance they would have made the playoffs. But all right, we get to the summer, okay, and we just drafted 12th overall. The pick is in. We picked whomever. He's going to be playing in the OHL. Ratu, he's not ready for NHL time yet. He's going to be in the minors for another season. And now we get to UFA, okay? All of a sudden, flashes across the board. 46 goal scorer Bo Horvat signs with the New York Islanders. Okay. Islanders trade Beauvillier away for a 7th round pick just to make salary cap space for them. On top of that, they bring in Pierre Engvall, who had 15 goals with Toronto playing on their 3rd line.
He didn't
right?
have 15
On top
goals
of that,
with
they bring in another puck-moving defenseman from somewhere else. We would be talking on your July 1st. I was like, wow, they made 3 moves to improve the roster from this year. They got a 40-plus goal guy from Horvat. Yeah, he's not going to score 40 again, but he had 31 the year before. So that's great. We got a 30-goal scorer here in Horvat. We just got a nice middle 6 option in Engvall. He looks interesting. He skates really fast.
He
we just
sucks,
got a puck mover.
Except he's afraid to go in a board. Go in the corner.
We just got 3 new players. One of them being the premier UFA. We got the number 1 UFA.
You're leaving out other things.
What am I leaving out?
We would be happy about that because here's the biggest point. We were not trading away draft capital for freaking a guy who came in as a rental that you could have signed as a free agent that anybody could have signed. We could have traded if we were so infatuated and so in love with him, depending on where he went as the deadline. We could have easily traded for his rights come before the draft, and we could have given up maybe a 4th round pick for his rights to give him that magical 8-year contract that he was so enamored with and that he needed. We could have gone ahead and done that without giving up our first, without giving up away our best prospect, without giving away Anthony Beauvillier.
No, we couldn't.
We just had more asset management trying to push for this team to win the Stanley Cup when we clearly were nowhere near where we needed to be.
Okay.
And here's
number 1, there is a 0% chance that we could have gotten Horvat in UFA. 0.
Well, make sure to say that.
Well, then guess what? I don't want him here. That
But that point is not relevant.
Why do you think that was the case? How is that not relevant?
What not relevant? You're saying, just run it back. And I'm saying the only reason why you're saying it's running it back is because the off-season moves were made in January instead of July. This is not a
lazy narrative. I feel like that's such a lazy narrative.
It's not
lazy narrative, Phil.
Why is it lazy? All I'm saying is if they did nothing in January and then made those same exact moves.
Why would they have done nothing in January?
No, here's what they should have done.
There's only one team that did nothing in January the year before, and that was the Islanders.
So they couldn't have done nothing again?
Why would they do nothing? What type
again,
of
that's not relevant.
When you realize
what they should have done at the deadline is they should have gone ahead and traded away guys like Mayfield who weren't coming back and guys like Varlamov who weren't going to sign back. And hell, if they wanted to come back, sign them on the real damn cheap when they come back later. Varlamov maybe is the only one you can make it a state. If he really loves the Islanders, really wants to be in New York, really wants to be with his buddy Sorokin, you can sign him as a free agent when his contract expires at the end of the year.
That is a completely different discussion, though.
No, it's not.
You're talking about with revisionist history. You'd be so much happier if we did all this on July 1st. We'd be talking about how great of you this. No, this wasn't. We've been freaking flaying the guy who didn't trade away pieces that are on expiring deals.
That's right.
We could have got assets back for.
That's right.
That's
again, for the 5th time. That has nothing to do with the fact that the overall makeup of the team was changed. It was changed. It was changed in January. And
how
in
did
February.
that change result in the postseason? How did that look? That change?
It changed results in the regular season dramatically.
It had nothing to do with only playing 9 postseason teams in the last 25 games. I think it was 9 teams that we played in the last.
They played 30 games from the time they got Horvat. You're telling me only 9 of the 30 teams?
9 over the last 25, I believe, is what it was, or 9 since the deadline. How many games did we play after the deadline?
And the deadline's irrelevant. I'm talking about from the time that they got Horvat. That is when
the deadline we acquired Pierre Engvall, so that's an important piece we've got to add in the equation.
Sure.
It was 9 teams, I believe, made the postseason, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm off by 1 or 2. 9 teams. We played more teams that didn't make the postseason with a losing record than that did make the postseason.
Yeah,
that's fine. I mean, like we played better. We played better down a stretch. But here's the thing:
they played Tampa, Carolina. Tampa is 3.
Tampa won 1 game that they needed, and then they shut it down.
Don't care.
Second game, they didn't care. Oh, you don't care about that. That doesn't care. Okay.
But they're a playoff. I mean, again, if you want to talk about teams playing tough versus not playing tough, whatever. I mean, Buffalo went on a 7-game win streak at one point. So I mean, do we count them differently? If you want to use a specific metric of playoff team instead of tough opponent, then fine. But I'm just telling you the playoff teams that we played. That's all.
Yeah, I think it was like 9 playoff teams since the deadline.
Out of 30?
No, it's not.
We didn't play 30 teams. We played Winnipeg. Okay, I don't know if that's before the deadline. No, so after the deadline. So March 4th, they played LA, Toronto, New Jersey, Tampa, Carolina, Tampa. So 6 playoff teams. And then the only reason it wasn't more than 6 playoff teams is because we happened to have knocked out Pittsburgh.
Okay, so it was only 6 postseason
how
teams.
many
We played.
wins
How long
against
of a stretch? I don't care.
How many
about
wins against those teams? We
Yeah.
beat. So
We
we
beat
lost to LA. We beat Toronto. We beat New Jersey.
Rebels. Yeah.
We split with Tampa, and we lost to Carolina. So 1,
3 and
2.
3.
So 3 and 3. 3 and 3 in those games. 500.
I'm not even concerned about that. We're never a good team when it comes to playing really good teams. Under the Trot system, we never played well against good teams. It's just you look
The first
at
year. No, the first year we did. In 2018-19, we did.
My point being is how many games was it since the deadline? Like 18
Yeah,
games?
but again, their uptick in play started well before the deadline.
A third of the games we played with the current consortment were against teams that were in the postseason, and 2/3 were not. And so we're celebrating, hey, we look good against teams that were not in the postseason picture again. And we're trying to carry that over, thinking that's what's going to drive us towards victory.
I mean, a 30-game sample is not a small sample. 30 games. They played 30 games from when they got Horvat. And that's when they started to really tick up. Kick Seattle's ass, 4-0. Kick their asses all over the ice. Winnipeg, did they make the playoffs? Swept them. Pittsburgh, swept Pittsburgh. The only reason Pittsburgh was not a playoff team is because we took the playoff spot from them.
The only reason that Pittsburgh didn't make the playoffs because they had Tristan Jarry in net, because this conversation is totally moot. If they had any other goalie on the planet, they beat the Islanders those 3 games. Islanders don't make the playoffs, and Lou Lamoriello is already gone, and Lane Lambert. We would have traded everyone, which is what we should have done. Here's what they should have done, Phil. This is what they should have done. Instead of going on the delusional path that, hey, let's run it back again for a 6th year, the same group that's never won anything. 6 years, never won anything. Let's roll it back again for another failed attempt to do what? Who knows? Fill up a stadium? Maybe. I don't know. So what should we have done? We should have, at the deadline, instead of trading for Horvat, absolutely not. We should have moved Mayfield
and Varlamov,
and we should have moved Parise.
Okay.
You could have gotten yourself, I believe, for those 3 players, a 1, 2 twos, and a 3.
2 first. I'd say 2.
You're not getting 2 first.
I'm going to say
You don't
a
think
1.
Varlamov goes for a 1?
No.
No, a second.
A second.
I think you could have got a first and a second for Mayfield.
Sure. Okay. A
And
first,
a
2
third
seconds,
for
and a third.
Parise.
First, 2 seconds, and a third. That's fine.
Then you have draft capital. Why? We weren't winning the Stanley Cup anyway. It was never happening. Washington realized they weren't winning a Stanley Cup. What did they do? They started selling their pieces. They knew it. They knew that this run that they had with this team was over. They still got – here's the thing. I'd still rather have their veterans as opposed to our veterans.
I wouldn't.
You wouldn't take Carlson and Ovechkin over Lee and –
Well, I would rather have, I mean,
Wilson.
Right now, I would rather have Nelson than Ovechkin.
Oh,
you're crazy. You're freaking crazy. You're crazy.
I'm not. I mean, Ovechkin is pretty much. I mean, if you watch Washington this season, the entirety of what they're trying to do with him is just get a goal record.
Try to wipe the smile off your face as you're saying this, please.
No, this entire season for Washington was just let's get him as close to the goal record as we possibly can. And you know what next season's going to be? Let's get him as close to the goal record as we possibly can. This guy's out for the full 2 minutes with the empty net every single night. I think he had like 7 or 8 empty net goals this year. All they're doing.
Like Brock Nelson.
Did they lose those games though, or did they win? It's a moot point if they're winning the games. Who scores?
They were the 8th worst team in the NHL this year, TJ. They stink.
Yeah, and again, I'm not
sweetheart Washington Capitals who didn't wave the white flag. Those feisty Capitals who are going to come back.
Kick the shit out of the Islanders. Kick the shit out of the Islanders down the road. They didn't give up.
They suck. They gave up. They were eliminated at the point that they beat us. They were eliminated like 2 weeks beforehand. I'm sorry, TJ. Your sweetheart Capitals, they are done. Nicholas Backstrom is completely toast.
Okay,
that dude could not move or shoot anymore.
Hold on. You wouldn't take.
Just think about all the excuses we make that you're making for the Islanders right now, and you won't make a single excuse for.
I'm not making any excuses. They made the point. What excuses am I making?
You're making right here that this current team, the iteration, is good enough to compete for a Stanley Cup next year because of all the moves we've made and what the results were after Bo Horvat. But we won't look after the Pierre Engvall because it doesn't necessarily the numbers don't add.
No, after the Pierre Engvall too, we were also great.
Yeah,
we were great
played
after both those
six
trades.
playoff teams. That's right. We played 33% of the games.
You could only play the teams in front of you.
That's correct. But I'm not going to use the teams we play in front of us to say, congratulations, we beat teams with losing records and we took care of the business we were supposed to take. I'm not going to say like, hey, I'm going to put a big old ribbon and a hat on and say, hey, we beat shitty teams that weren't in the postseason. Let's celebrate that. That's the reason we should believe this team is good enough to make the postseason and win a cup. I'm not going to say that. I don't get it. I don't get it. This team that got bounced in the first round of the postseason. Hey, we've had zero wins in the round of the postseason the last 2 years. We still think this team
got beat by an AHL level team, Carolina.
Okay,
with all the injuries they got.
But again, the team from last year is completely different than the team from this year.
Every
the
year
team from last year is about 75-80% of the team that was this year.
No, it's not. No, it's not. I don't see Beauvillier. I don't see Bailey. I don't see Chara.
Roster.
What?
Chara's not. Green's not. Goaltenders are the exact same. So there's two that are exact same.
Okay,
You've
forget
got
the goalies.
defensemen.
First of all, we don't even know if the goaltenders are the exact same. We don't know who's going to be our goaltender.
Okay, backup goaltender. I don't give a shit about backup goaltender. They're freaking backup.
Well, you kind of have to give a shit about it for two reasons.
He's a backup. He's a backup.
Okay, I'm sorry. You cannot treat a second goaltender like a backup quarterback in the NFL. This person has to start a significant amount of games that actually matters for you.
He lost them all down the stretch, every single one.
That's true.
Listen, if Varlamov doesn't go 11-9-4, and if instead he does 7,
probably get higher in the playoff hunt.
No, if you have a crappy number 2 goalie, that affects where you're going to be in the standings. And you know what else it affects? If you have a crappy number 2 goalie, and you have to ride your goalie 62 games when he shouldn't be ridden 62 games, that matters. The bottom line is you should be getting minimum 25 starts out of your number 2 goalie. That's almost a third of the season. Okay? This isn't the NFL where it's like, oh, the backup quarterback, hopefully the guy never plays. This guy plays, and this guy plays significant games. They're a part of the team.
Yes,
they're going to start 25 to 30
Anaheim, San Jose.
That's not who he should have played those teams, but they didn't. They gave him
Chicago.
That's not who he played.
So to bring it back to the conversation, we have
let me get your take on that, TJ. Is a number 2 goalie a significant part of an NHL team?
No.
You're telling me a guy who starts
all the number 2 goalie does is make sure he can fill the spot to get you to the postseason. Because in the postseason, the number 2 goalie.
But again, that's significant. I'm sorry, you're telling me a guy who starts 25 to 30 games isn't significant for you?
No.
You just said all he's significant for is to get you to the postseason.
You spot start him against the weakest teams.
Playing as shitty teams in the league is what you should do with your backup goalie. You play him on the second end of back-to-backs, and occasionally you're going to lose some when you're playing against
Florida, Colorado, Rangers, Dallas, Devils, Bruins, Vegas, Calgary, Boston Bruins, Vegas again, Boston again, Winnipeg, Tampa. It's more than half his starts. More than half his starts are against playoff teams this year.
I don't control what the coach does and who he determines to put out a goalie against.
Again, when you have a back-to-back against the Lightning and the Canes, you can't really shelter him. I mean, they did.
You lose them both of those games anyway. You lose them both those games.
But the bottom line is you want to have a guy who you could send out for 25 to 30 starts, and you can't just send them out against the bad teams. That's just not how it works.
There are backup goalies who are a freaking dime a dozen. They're a dime a dozen.
They're a dime a dozen until your backup goalie costs you a playoff spot.
They're a
Our goalie coaches and backup goalies.
If your team isn't, if a backup goalie costs your team a playoff spot, guess what? Your team isn't good enough. It means your team isn't good enough. If a backup goalie playing,
look at the forward group. The forward group has how many of the same exact pieces, right? On the front line, how many of the same pieces? We maybe have.
But again, the most significant ice time goes to who?
We have 3 or 4.
Who gets the most significant ice time?
We've got 2 different starting defensemen, and we maybe have possibly 1 different goalie. This team is 70 to 80%, the exact same that we had the years we've had 0 postseason wins. Or
who gets the most significant ice time in the top 6?
Barzell and Nelson.
No, on the forwards, the top 6. Okay, when you're changing out Beauvillier and Bailey for Horvat and Engvall, that is significant. You cannot tell me that a non-NHL player leaving your top 6
I'm saying
Horvat is insignificant.
The results were still the same.
The results were not the same.
I think Engvall is Beauvillier. I think Engvall is Beauvillier. I don't think there's any difference between the two of them production-wise. Engvall and
You're wrong, though.
Beauvillier.
I mean, Beauvillier had,
Same
what, 20
freaking guy.
points in 50 games for us this year? He had 20 points in 50 games.
How much?
You're trying to make the case here that we're in a spot. The Islanders, hey, we've made so many different changes. This is a totally different cast and crew than the prior team that was out there. It's not. That's all I'm saying with this. You're trying to bring it to somewhere else. It's a similar team, 70% the same.
Okay.
Again, if they're not bringing back Mayfield, half that defense will be different than it was last year.
So you've got other guys within the organization. Okay, sure.
That's significant. Again, I don't know who's going to replace Mayfield.
And the forward group is like 75% the same.
And the forward group, we'll see if Parisi's coming back. But if Parisi doesn't come back, that's going to be a full third completely different. Between Fashing taking the spot, he wasn't on last year's team. Horvat wasn't on last year's team. Engvall wasn't on last year's team. Holmstrom played more than
6 guys.
Again, no,
exception
of those. I'm sorry, 2 of those guys are top 6 guys.
Okay, if Pierre Engvall's a top 6 forward, your team isn't good enough. He's not a top 6 player on a good team. He just isn't.
It's good to know.
Okay, and you're telling me that Kelly Yarncrook and Alex Kerfoot are good top 6 players?
Better than him. They're better than he is.
The takeaway I have is right now Phil thinks this team's good enough to win a Stanley Cup, and it's just not.
Wrong.
They're good enough to get into the playoffs, and once they're in the playoffs, anything can happen.
Yeah, again, there you go. There you go.
I know he says that.
I don't. It's funny because I mentioned. If you want to be, you say, okay. Would you rather be the team where you're the favorite and it's like, hey, we're going to the playoffs, we're expected to win, or you want to be the team that says, well, hey, if we squeegee ourselves into the final playoff spot, anything can happen, but what's probably going to happen?
I think they can finish 3rd next year in the division.
Absolutely not. There's no freaking way.
I think there's a way.
I think maybe we come in 5th in division. I think that's best. Pittsburgh gets a goalie. They're better than we are.
Maybe.
Absolutely.
Maybe. But again, that's a huge if. If Pittsburgh gets a goalie, okay, which goalie are they getting? That's a huge if. Most goalies suck. We've established this year.
Maybe they go after Varlamov.
He's not going to Pittsburgh. I would say if Varlamov is I'm going to make a prediction right now. If Varley goes anywhere but the Islanders, it's going to be to the Devils. That's my call.
Well, the Devils have a problem on their hand because they got a whole bunch of goalies under
Vanacek
contract.
stinks. They could just simply trade him for spare parts.
So he can be traded. Okay, easily he could be traded.
I think he has 1 year left on his deal.
We have gotten way off topic. I think the process.
Every time Phil comes on, we get off topic because he goes down these ridiculous rabbit holes. He's a menace.
I'm not going down ridiculous rabbit holes. I'm giving you my take on next year's team, and if it looks the way I think it's going to look, I think it could be a 101 to 105 point team.
I'll bet you right now that we do not get 101 to 105 points.
All right, I'll take that action.
All right, good.
We'll have to come up with terms, but sure.
We'll come up with terms. Don't worry.
100. So just so I make sure we've got
101 points. 101 points is the cutoff here.
So we're going to improve almost 10%. 10%.
4 wins. I have this team winning 4 more games next year. I have us getting 4 more wins.
Wow.
Or 8 more overtime losses. Or a mix of the 2.
I don't see it at all. I think they need
for
to
me,
get
it's not that hard to see a path. It's not that hard for me to see a path to a first line being infinitely more effective than it was for the first half of last season.
Who's going to play left wing? Who's going to play left wing? You don't have left wing.
I don't care who plays left wing. They had Josh Bailey as the left wing for the first 35 games last season for the most part.
It was 30. We went through the math the other day.
30. Okay, 30. They had Josh Bailey.
Okay, so there you go again. You said it was 50 the other night. You said it was freaking 50. And I said, bullshit. I called you on it, wanted to be in 30. Now you bumped it up to 35 already. If I let
the bottom line is
he
played significant minutes.
Games.
He played significant minutes on the Barzal line, and then he played significant minutes on the Nelson line. He's going to be playing no minutes total on this team at all next year. So you're not going to have to worry about a guy on the back check against Buffalo in a 0-0 game, slowing up and adjusting his gloves while the entire play breaks down because you're too busy fixing your gloves and adjusting your jock strap to get back into the play. That's not going to happen next year.
Until they break up the cul-de-sac crew, you're going to see repeated failure year after year. Everyone is too comfortable on this team.
Until we start to have more responses at the end of the year, like Matt Barzal's, and we keep having responses like Anders Lee, Cal Clutterbuck, Bo Horvat. The list goes on. Your team will be a perpetual.
But here's another variable. Listen, if you're bringing in a new GM, I can guarantee you that Clutterbuck's not going to be in the starting lineup. I can almost guarantee you that Matt Martin won't be in the starting lineup either. A new GM, at the very least, is going to do things in the areas where it's easy to do it, right? It's easy to get rid of the Martin contract when it's 1 year left. It's easy to get rid of the Clutterbuck contract when it's 1 year left. And again, these are fairly relatively inexpensive contracts.
Sure.
At the very least, you're going to have that type of improvement where maybe you could put a fourth line together that looks like Fashing, Cizikas, which that's where Fashing, I genuinely think he belongs. He's more of a fourth line player than a third line player. He was fantastic with Cizikas late in the season. They fed off each other very well. And who's the fourth person in that line? Maybe it's Holmstrom. Maybe it's Durando. Someone wins that out of camp. I don't care. The bottom line is it's going to be someone with more mobility than Matt Martin. So that's another variable that I'm taking into account over here, that if it's not Lou, you're going to have more turnover in areas that you want to see turnover. You're not going to see any of the bolted down pieces moved. Hate to break it to you, Anders Lee, he's what I consider to be bolted down over here. He's not going to be moved, whether you like it or not. But at the very least, you're going to see some of these staler pieces cycled out.
Here's the thing. You're going to have pluses. You're also going to have minuses with that. You're going to have a lot of boneheaded mistakes, young player mistakes that happen.
Sure.
But, here's the other thing, and I'll let Grumpy speak on this too. That's a step in the right direction. I'm fine. If you get a new general manager, I consider this year a step possibly in the right direction. Lou Lamoriello is a step every single season he continues in the wrong direction. He's just continuing to dig us a deeper and deeper hole in the deeper pit. Can't have him at the helm anymore.
I don't know if you saw, by the way, the Flyers just completed their front office tonight.
Oh, what happened there? No, I didn't see.
So Briere is going to stay as the GM, and then Keith Jones is going to be the president of hockey ops.
Keith Jones. Well, we don't have.
In other words, they're going to continue to suck for the next 10 years. But all right, go on.
Right. We don't have to worry about the Flyers.
No, I know. So, I mean, it's just TJ brought up. I think it's a step in the right direction. So I just wanted to interject with, by the way, the Flyers just got X and Y. So it might be.
I hope that our ownership is smart enough. The first GM and head coach hire they had was a good one. It was good at the start. It was fantastic. I'm hoping they could replicate something like that on this recent one. Maybe they do, maybe they don't.
They need to hire a young assistant general manager who thinks the way the modern NHL is played, period. And you know what? If it means that you have to just start jettisoning pieces and take a couple of steps back to take a step forward, you have to do it. Just treading water is not good enough anymore. It just isn't. And for me, if it's me, like I said, what I'm just wondering if ownership didn't say, I mean, let's say they get rid of Lamoriello. When do you think they would have made that decision? I mean, it's not like, they would have to have known something during the year, wouldn't you think, before the trade deadline? Or do you think?
Listen, when you consider his age, this is probably something, again, we don't know. But if that is what's going on, then as a business owner, forget the fact that it's an NHL team. It's like, well, I can't have this company run by an 80-year-old forever. What's the succession plan here? Where are we going, right? This guy came in when he was 75, and now all I see him doing every other hour is taking his blood pressure pills. So, all right, Lou, let's talk about where we're going down the line. I mean, the rumor always has been that his contract and Trotz's contract lined up with each other. So if that's the case, well, we're not going to give you a 3 to 5 year extension over here because you could be 6 feet underground any day from now. So, yeah, I would think that was probably conversations that was taking place during the year. Someone pointed this out to me, the comment that he made of when they're like, all right, how much is the Horvat contract? Too much and too long. That could have been an indicator that was more of an ownership-driven decision as opposed to Lou. Kind of like backhandedly saying, well, the guy upstairs wanted to open up the pocket, so he gave him too much and too long. Don't blame me for that type of thing. It's possible. It's possible that's what that move was.
For me, though, if I'm an owner and I know that, you know what, he's 80, the team is not appreciably better than it's been. It's been another down year, and it was a down year.
Sure.
Regardless, we squeaked in the playoffs, right?
Sure, 100%.
With the success they had 3 years previous.
Yep.
You have to say, do I want this guy trading more assets for something that's not going to happen this year, or do we want to start a transition away? That's why I always said they should have had an assistant GM in there last year to kind of find out about the players and have them transition out last year. They didn't.
Don't they have an assistant? I want to say they have an assistant GM.
They need fresh blood in this organization.
I do agree with that.
They need fresh blood. I don't want like Fredo in there. I mean, Lou does everything for that team. And the whole thing is, if I'm an owner, I'm like, dude, you trade away all of our draft picks, all of our prospects. We have
the assistant general manager is Steve Pellegrini. He's the guy who does all the contracts.
I don't mean somebody who's involved in player personnel.
I mean, I'm just looking. I'm simply looking at their.
I want someone who is a pro personnel director. That's what I want. Someone who knows the talent around the league, who knows the value of whatever the Islander talent is, who's not afraid to ruffle a few feathers to make some changes. Changes need to happen on this team. Just rolling back the same team that ended the year it's not moving forward. Absolutely.
How about our good friend who he's been grooming for the past 2 years, Johnny Boychuk? What if they've been grooming Boychuk for the role for the past 2 years?
Sorry.
He's too ingrained in the organization too. They need somebody from outside.
Yep.
I'm not saying that. I'm not asking your opinion. Is he good? Is that a consideration? Is that something that you're thinking now? Okay, this guy's been in the press box with Lou for 2 years now. Is that someone who's going to be the GM? It might be. I wouldn't be surprised. It would not shock me if they announce again, and that could go either way. Who knows? Maybe Boychuk has different ideas.
Do you not think he's too close to some of these players, though?
Who the heck knows? Maybe you go more mercenary when you're in an executive position.
Well, if that's fine. They need a mercenary in the GM spot right now.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to judge what a player like that would be as a GM. Most GMs are former players, right? I mean that's just typically the way it works.
Most have experience too.
What?
Most have experience too.
Right, they start as assistant general managers. Right? I mean, it's not like they're going to sign Varlamov to be the general manager, although they've done it before, so I wouldn't put it by them.
He'd be good at getting guys from the KHL though.
I hope so. That'd be great if we could have a guy who could get us the what's that kid in Vancouver's name?
I don't know.
One he had 80 points this year or something like that, or 75 points.
Oh, the P, right?
No, not Podkolzin. The kid they signed him. Kuzmenko. Andrei Kuzmenko.
Yeah, anybody. I just think they need somebody coming here, a mercenary type. Somebody's like, you know what? Yep. New sheriff in town. I don't like this mix in the room. Everybody's too damn chummy. You never win anything. For me, those exit interviews spoke volumes to me.
Cal Clutterbuck, they were asking like, hey, are you looking to, did you happen to hear the Cal Clutterbuck?
I read it and I'm like, this guy's just also completely aloof. Not aloof. It's just, he's always kind of rough around the edges with his interviews. I'll tell you when I'm done. I'll know when I'm done before you know when I'm done or something like that. Like, buddy, you haven't played more than 50 games in like 7 years. You're done. You can't stay healthy.
When are you planning on retiring? Is the question they asked him, Grump, because I don't think you read it, or maybe you did, or you forgot. But they asked him like, "Hey, when are you planning on retiring?" He's like, "Well, I'll know before you do," type of thing. And it was just kind of like, ugh.
I mean, but you just listen to the guys, the guys who've been here forever, and it's like there's never been any accountability for their performance. Nothing. They just, like I said, it's like a freaking beer league. Everyone lives in the same cul-de-sac. We all play together for years. Doesn't matter if we win. Doesn't matter if we lose. We sign contracts here. We're never moving. It's the only team in the league that's like that, honestly. The only team in the league. You don't have to win anything or be any good, and you got a job for life. No. They need to turn the heat up on some of these guys. Light a fire under their asses.
Here's the thing. We've mentioned it before. I'm willing to take the risk that it completely blows up in our face. I am. I'm willing to take that risk. The reason why is because I know what this grass looks like here. Bland, weeds all throughout it. I'm willing to take the risk that the next grass and the next patch of field, it could be barren, could be a desolate wasteland, could be just dirt. It also could be a I don't know. Also, it could be, it could be a fantastic lawn. I don't know. I'm willing to take the risk that the next guy we bring on is just an utter disaster for the potential that he could be the step in the right direction.
It's nice to know that after that eloquent presentation earlier, TJ's resorted back to his normal self. Thank you. I'm glad you're back, TJ.
Hey, man.
Listen,
glad to be back. Glad to be back.
Listen, everyone was frustrated with the coaching staff last year. Anyone with a pulse knew that Trotz, distracted, not distracted, his mother died. Again, all that is fine, but he objectively did not have a good feel for the team, and he made a lot of really, really bad coaching decisions. And he was bad. It was a bad season for him. It was a bad season for everyone but the power play coach. And we were hoping that a new coach would come in. And, I was hopeful on Lane. I thought, this guy is highly sought after. Yzerman wants to interview him for the Red Wings, was the rumor. Like, this is someone who hockey people respect. Yeah, it could be great. I thought they were terrible. I thought, and maybe it's part of the growing pains of being a rookie coach. And not everyone's going to be like Burnett out of the gate and win the President's Trophy. And fine. But if this is the group that you're going to go with, you don't really have the time to have a rookie coach go through those growing pains. You don't.
Doesn't it say more about the players when you're saying, oh, this coach, he lost the room. The next coach loses the room. It's like, maybe you got to take a look at the players at some point in time.
Yep.
Maybe it's just not the coach. Maybe it's the players and their laissez-faire attitude, their sense of entitlement, the fact that, we're here, we're the core guys. And it starts with the captain, in my opinion. It starts with the captain. It all trickles down from him.
Maybe he's losing Barzy, though.
I don't know. I listen to Barzal.
Maybe listen, he looked very frustrated. Maybe it's a situation where it's like Barzal's like, Jesus, this guy's got to stick me with Bailey at every single opportunity he's got. I can't have a better winger. I would prefer Matt Martin have played with Bailey with Barzal for those 30 games. He actually looked like he was interested in playing this season. For all we know, it could be that Barzal hates him, or even Dobson. Dobson looked completely disinterested in playing any sort of defense from January on. He looked disinterested. Maybe Dobson hates the guy. I don't know. He benched him for the second half of a playoff game, or late in the playoff game in Game 5. You don't know where the complaints are coming from. They're not coming from Cal Clutterbuck. I could promise you that. Every single time that guy was healthy, he was back in the lineup. Oh, yeah, you tore a tendon in your hand. You took 3 months off. Oh, all right, Holmstrom, you're gone because Clutterbuck just came back. Oh, but I've been playing this. Yeah, I don't care, but it's Clutterbuck. Like, who knows where the complaints are coming from?
I think the issue is the mindset's not right. I think the mindset originally where it was us against them and everybody is motivated pulling in the same direction was the right mindset to have. And that's why I think that Barry Trotz was able to take a much more inferior team deep or at least into the postseason that hadn't seen that type of success in a while. And once you kind of accomplish a bit, hey, it's more focused on comfort than it is on achievement. That's fine, right? That's just human nature. You get focused on comfort when you can have it and not necessarily as driven. But I want guys who...
The older you get, the less drive you have.
It's just your body.
Listen, ultimately, look at some of the things that they ultimately change up this season, right? Beauvillier was a buddy of everyone. He wasn't pulling his weight for over 100 games. They shipped his ass out of town. Bailey, you're not getting it done. You're the longest tenured Islander. I don't care. You're not playing down the stretch, and you're not playing any playoff games. It's not like there was a zero accountability this year as there was last year.
The biggest problem is Anders Lee. He's the guy with the C on his chest. You want to make a statement, you get rid of your captain.
Sure.
That's making a statement. There's a new sheriff in town. It's not going to be the same guy over here who puts down younger players in the organization, who talks shit about younger players to upper management. We don't want a guy like that as captain. He needs to go. You got to cut the head off. That's what you do. You cut the head off and the body, they say you get rid of you work out the body, the head will fall. No, you cut him right off at the neck. Bam. That sends a statement to the rest of the team. Times are changing. Times they are a changing, my friends. Times they are a changing. That's what needs to happen with this team. You get rid of him. Eat half his, trade him anywhere. I don't care. Here's the thing. Anders Lee, you better pray that you don't get hurt, because you're going to be on long-term injury till your contract expires. You will never play here again. I word it just like that. You're losing the C. We're making a change, bro. You are the problem. This culture is the problem. We want a kid like Barzal to be the leader on this team. Look at him. He cares. I mean, you're invisible out there. You're the freaking captain. You lumber out into the ice, you stand in front of the net, and then 30 seconds later, you waddle off. That's what you do. We don't need that anymore. We don't need your divisive attitude in this room. You're too comfortable. Everyone wants to have barbecues over your house. No, those days are over. We need some assholes on this team.
I do agree with that. We've talked about that on the show too before. We need some assholes on this team, is right. We need some guys that are going to push people beyond their comfort zone. Could be anyone.
Me.
Anybody. I think players. Was that?
Grumpy should be on the team.
I said me. I'm an asshole.
Make Grumpy the GM. Grumpy for GM.
Oh, let me tell you something. Anders Lee would hate me.
I want to say Grumpy might.
Hey, I want to talk to Anders Lee. Bring him in. Dude, you got some type of no trade clause on your contract? How bad do you want to stay here? Because we're going to find out, because you're going to be riding the bus. You and your buddy freaking Bailey. You could be an Islanders ambassador down in Bridgeport. Maybe you'll send it to the ECHL affiliate.
Go to war.
That you're not allowed to do. You can't actually send them to the ECHL, but you can send them to the AHL.
Absolutely. You know what, dude? Like, what did Tampa do with McDonough last year? No move clause.
Well, you know what? It turned out to be a mistake, unfortunately, for them.
Yeah, but they needed the cap space, right?
Yeah, but they should have just done that to Killorn instead.
Okay. Regardless, no move clause. They were able to move him.
It was a no trade clause, not a no move clause. If it was a no move clause, they would not have been able to do it.
I thought he had no move.
No trade. You can't waive someone on a no move clause.
Okay.
You can't even put them on waivers.
He's just got a no trade. Isn't that modified no trade now?
No,
for Lee?
It's a full no trade. It's the same thing as McDonough. It's a full no trade.
Okay. Well, guess what?
The only difference is, obviously, teams would want to pick up McDonough off waivers. No one wants to pick up Anders Lee off of waivers. 0 teams would have any interest.
That's fine, dude. Like I said, this is the way I'd approach it. You're not going to be part of the future. You're not going to be part of this team. We can move you. If you want to move somewhere else, we'll try to trade you. We'll even need half your salary to get you out of here. If not, you're going to be in the minors. I know we only get a $1 million cap thing. That's fine. We don't want you here anymore. And I will say just like that. And he'd leave out there. I said, by the way, give me the C off of your jersey. That's the first thing to go. We want that C back. We got a better candidate.
I'm sure the equipment manager could just find a different C in the back. No.
As a matter of fact, we're going to give you a Bridgeport jersey. Here you go. This, Johnny.
So when he leaves the office, Grumpy, you're going to have a.
By the way, would it be more disrespectful if they made him the captain of Bridgeport, or if they didn't? What would be more disrespectful? It's like, by the way, you're going to Bridgeport. Not only that, you're going to captain that team.
No,
that's a good one.
Assistant. You're going to be assistant captain on that team. Not even good enough to be a captain. Assistant.
But enough.
That's worse than not having a letter at all, right?
And here's the thing: you're going to be a healthy scratch every night in Bridgeport.
No, you can play him occasionally.
No way. No, I don't want him playing. You want
to feel like an Andrew Ladd situation where it's
that's right.
You go home.
Yep. And if you get hurt, pray you don't get hurt. Pray you don't step on a rake doing your lawn, because that's going to land you on long-term injury for 4 years.
It's 3 years, but all right.
Yeah, that's what's happening.
Oh no,
dude! I like I said, he'd never play for me. Josh Bailey, bye. You can help all the kids in Bridgeport do their math homework. That's it. You're done too.
Oh, God.
Okay, someone brought up an interesting trade scenario to me today. This was actually interesting.
I'm interested.
Okay. The Maple Leafs. Let's just say they don't pull off the miracle, right? They have a decision to make with Matthews and a decision to make with Nylander this summer, right? They're both going to be going into their last year of their contract. If they get an indication that Matthews doesn't want to stay, they might legitimately need to trade him to LA or wherever. Okay. At which point they're going to need a center, long-term center to replace Austin Matthews. Who's a center who's from the greater Toronto area? Bo Horvat. Bo Horvat's from London, only 120 miles away from Toronto. Probably grew up a Maple Leaf fan, if I had to guess. What if you can build a trade with the Maple Leafs where you trade them Bo Horvat? Obviously, something else would need to be attached. and then you get William Nylander.
Yes.
And he signs an extension.
Yep. I do that.
I think the only way to get it done, that the Leafs would do it, is if you did something along the lines, because Nylander this year was probably a top 10 winger in the league. He was the best forward on Toronto. I know Marner had more points, but Marner plays with Matthews. Nylander was the best forward on Toronto this entire season, bar none. He's also been their best forward in the playoffs. Not even close. He is ridiculously good. Dobson and Horvat for Nylander and Timothy Liljegren.
I'm not trading Dobson. A 22-year-old defenseman, 23-year-old defenseman.
He's 23.
Yeah.
Dobson and Horvat for Liljegren and Nylander.
I don't think much of Liljegren.
He's good. He's very good.
Yeah.
His 5-on-5 production is right on par with Dobson's.
Yeah, he plays on a different,
and his skating ability is better.
They play on two totally stylistically different teams. So,
I mean,
if he comes here, he wouldn't put up the points that Dobson put up.
He's very good, though. Definitely better defensively. Better skater. He's a very good skater, Liljegren.
Like I said, you need to get rid of the veterans. It's not about moving your young players. Now, I'm fine with moving.
TJ, what would you do in that scenario? Nylander with an extension and Liljegren for Horvat and Dobson.
I'm saying no.
Okay.
Here's the problem. It's continuing to put more and more faith in that this is somehow reconcilable. This current team can be reconciled into and can be built up into a cup competitor. We're just not. I firmly believe if you're bringing in a new general manager, you have to, and I mean absolutely have to start the reevaluation of where the team's true value is. I don't believe the team's true value is as high as what fans and what we think and what we want to believe it is.
Nylander would easily be the best forward on this team. He's better than Barzal.
Really?
Without question.
I think they'd work well together as well. I think
is without question better. No one will tell you that Barzal is better than Nylander. Nylander he's a freak.
I think they're a good match. I think they're a really good match.
Yeah, his skating is just insane. He drives the net. He had 40 goals this year. 40 goals this year, 34 goals last year. He's been a better than point per game player 2 seasons in a row. He's better than Barzal.
You know, but if
Matt Barzal was playing in Toronto, he'd have a point a game. He'd be a point a game player for the last 6 years in a row.
True.
I am telling you from watching Toronto, Nylander is the best forward on that team. He makes John Tavares look like he still has it. Because John Tavares, he's toast. He absolutely stinks. He cannot move on the ice. If not for Nylander, Tavares would be a 50-point player max.
If you put Barzal on Toronto, he's a 100-point-a-year guy.
No, he's not.
No, yes,
I absolutely think he is.
Even Marner's not 100 points, and he plays with Matthews.
I think
he's not a 100-point guy in Toronto.
I think Matt Barzal really suffers playing for this team.
But he's not better than Nylander, Marner, or Matthews.
I don't. I think he's in that group. I just think he's
in. He's not in that group.
I don't think
he doesn't score goals like them.
Well, it's because he doesn't shoot the puck. He's a setup guy.
Whatever the reason is, he doesn't score goals like them.
Let me ask you this:
all those guys are 30 to 40 goal scorer. Like Matthews' floor is like 35 goals, like on a bad year. He's nowhere near Matthews. He just isn't. He's not in that. He's not in that sphere.
I think a guy like Nick Backstrom in his prime was. I think he was a guy up there that was like, holy shit, watch out for Nick Backstrom, right?
I don't think Barzal is Nick Backstrom though.
If he was playing with Ovechkin,
absolutely was. And Nick Backstrom had years.
It's impossible to know.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Look at who he's playing with. Josh Bailey and Anders freaking Lee.
Yeah.
It's like the helicopter line. There's a reason why I call it the helicopter line. Play with no wings.
You talk about this, and again, like it was Backstrom when he was younger, but he had 33 goals in a season and 60, right over 100-point season there in Washington.
Didn't Matthews score 40 goals in his first season?
Who's that?
Didn't Matthews score 40 goals in his first season?
I'm not sure.
Nobody. Right, Matthews, first season. 40 goals, 29 assists in his first year, rookie season. And that was as an 18-year-old, right? He didn't have 2 seasons before. He came right in. 69 points, 40 goals in his first season, playing with garbage. That Toronto team was awful. They made the playoffs only because Matthews is a true superstar and was a superstar from day one. He's not in that league. He's not in the league where he could take the team picking 1 overall and overnight turn them into a playoff team. He's just not. And I love Barzal, but
I think he's comparable to a guy like Mitch Marner. I think he's comparable to guys of that ilk.
Matthews is the goal scorer. He's not a setup guy. They're two totally different players.
I get it, but in terms of like just overall impact of the player, no one's going to say that Barzal's in the same league as Matthews. He's just not. Like, you don't need to worry. You don't need to worry about Matthews' line mates. He played with objectively garbage players that year. That team stunk. The team made the playoffs because Matthews came in to the literal worst team in the league. They were the worst team. They added Matthews. They made the playoffs. You wouldn't add Barzal to the Chicago Blackhawks now and make the playoffs.
I'm not agreeing that he's as good as Austin Matthews. I'm just saying he's as good as guys like Nylander and of that ilk.
Listen, I can hear debate, but I would still put Nylander and Marner a bit ahead of him. Let's just say a bit. Not a lot, a little bit.
The issue I have is I think we're just rearranging chairs on the Titanic.
I like Nylander.
Nylander's not rearranging chairs.
You also like Bo Horvat, Grump. So
Nylander Nylander is if Barzal's here, Nylander is here. Like Nylander he's a freak. Just watch him play. You got to watch him consistently. The things he does with the puck is just no one on our team could do it.
If Matt Barzal played with Nylander, they'd both have a lot of points. They both be point of game guys.
Think about it like this: it's not no trade like that ever is going to be done. Think about how much we had to give up to get Bo Horvat.
No trade like that's ever going to be done. I mean, did you miss the Kachuk and Huberdeau trade last year?
Our general manager doesn't win trades; he loses.
We don't know.
But you have to get a new GM.
We don't know. I'm just saying we don't know who our GM is. We have no idea what's what.
Sure.
If I'm just saying, is there a conceivable scenario where the Leafs are looking to add a center? Either they're going to keep Matthews or not keep Matthews, whatever, and they need to bring in someone to stabilize that situation long term for them. If they end up moving Nylander because there's no conceivable way that Nylander stays.
Don't you think they get hung if they lose Matthews? Whoever's
it's not up to them. It's up to Matthews.
If they don't get a deal done, don't you think they're like, why couldn't you get a deal done?
We couldn't get a deal done because he didn't want to stay. I mean, he's an American. It's not like inconceivable that an American.
Okay, but don't you think that the front office is going to bear the brunt of that burden?
The front office won't be there. They're going to be cleaned out. You think anyone survives that? No, they're gone.
I don't know.
What, this year? You think they're all gone after this year?
Well, think about it. Dubas is not under contract anymore, okay? If they don't pull off a miracle against Florida, right? So then
it's possible they can. Next game
did win their first playoff series since 19 whatever.
Irrelevant. That's such a low standard to hold this core to. Such a low standard.
Same thing with just squeaking into the playoffs and getting beat in the first round and missing the postseason last year.
You'd be a hell of a lot angrier if you had 4 players like Nylander, Tavares, Matthews, and Marner on your team. I can promise you that.
Sure, I would.
And had nothing other than we just won 1 playoff series in 5 years, right? You lose to Florida, you get called in by the board of Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment. All right, gentlemen, you're up for a new contract right now. Tell us why we should give you another 3 to 5 year commitment over here when you've done absolutely nothing with the best young core in hockey. Objectively, the best young core in hockey.
The reason being is because every single time the team that wins our conference
wins the Stanley Cup.
Always wins the Stanley Cup or plays in the Stanley Cup finals.
We have to
play against them every year.
Let's be honest. That's been the top heavy wise, the best division in the NHL, top heavy.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying top to bottom, but Boston, always super competitive.
Columbus.
Tampa.
They played
Toronto.
Columbus. Montreal. They played Columbus and Montreal. I mean, listen, Montreal happened to have gone to the
I said the top half, not the bottom half, the top half. Not top to bottom.
Columbus is in ours, aren't they?
Columbus. That season, it was the play-in. Listen, 2 out of the 5 years, it was Columbus and Montreal, and they blew a 3-1 series lead to Montreal. Right? The other 3 years, okay. So, you had Boston. The year before Boston, you also had Boston. That was right before they got Tavares that year. And then it was Tampa Bay. Okay, no one's going to fault you for losing to the Stanley Cup champions. Okay. But now this year, I mean, if they don't get past Florida, it's just gonna be like, all right, it's been 5 years of absolutely nothing since we got Tavares. This is a long-term commitment, right? And if they present Dubas with, let's say they table an offer and say, okay, you got 2 more years to do this. We're gonna give you a 2-year extension. You don't think Dubas is going to take a listen to see if the Penguins are offering him a 5-year deal? Of course he will. He has to think about his own stability at that point.
I'm going to be honest with you. If I'm Dubas, I'm not saying I want to tie myself to the anchor that is the Pittsburgh Penguins. That's going to drag you down.
Forget Pittsburgh. Calgary is going to be in on Dubas. There's going to be other teams that are looking for executives that are going to be in.
Islanders, potentially. That's the rumor.
Islanders could be looking at Dubas. No, but seriously, he's a guy who has a reputation. I don't think that reputation is backed by anything tangible. I think his results have been awful, and the moves that he's made have mostly been catastrophe for the Leafs, if you look at his record and not his predecessors before him. But he's got this rep that he's this analytics guru and genius and this young up-and-coming executive, and some team is going to want him, and some team is going to table a long-term offer. I'm just saying it's not inconceivable that MLSE will look at him and say, well, it's been 5 years already. That's a heck of a long time. We've got no hardware to show for it. Maybe a 2 or 3 year deal if you'd like, if you want to go extend here. But otherwise, we're going to take a look somewhere else.
I think a 2-year deal is fine. I think a 2-year deal with that team
for them, maybe, but I don't think for Dubas. Not when people are offering him 5 or 6 years.
Here's the thing: do you believe in what you've made? Do you believe in what you've constructed? Do you believe in what you've gone ahead and formed here in Toronto? If not, fly the coop. See you later. You're a freaking bitch. If you do, stick it here and prove us right.
Again, there's no guarantee that the board is happy with his job. There's no guarantee. You're going to have multiple opinions in that. You're going to have multiple opinions in that room, right?
Sure. First postseason round victory they've had in 19 years.
But you're going to have to upgrade from him. I mean,
It's not very hard to upgrade from. He's terrible.
Well, but who's available out there?
You could do a better job. Anyone could do a better job than him. He's terrible.
You could do a better job than Dubas.
Well, that's for certain.
He was set up with a beauty situation, and he somehow always makes the wrong move.
I think actually I like what he's done the last couple of years. In the fact that he's turned the team. They were just, to me, one of those they were like a figure skater team, and the playoffs not tough enough. The last 2 years, he's made conscious efforts to try to change that. And I think that he has done that for the most part.
Last year, yeah. This year, no. This year, they've looked awful in the playoffs.
I don't think they've looked good.
They haven't looked good. Listen, I think the O'Reilly trade, what did he trade? He traded a first, second, third, fourth, or something like that. He traded 4 draft picks. I think that's a fine trade because O'Reilly's a win-now piece, and they're in a win-now window. But if you look at the body of work over the past, 2 years, I mean, think about it. Just imagine a scenario where Lou Lamoriello signed Peter Mrazek off of 2 hip surgeries to a 2-year, $3.5 million deal. And he was so predictably bad that 10 months later, he was trading out of the first round to dump him in the draft. And then after he did that, he went to Ottawa and got Matt Murray for 2 years at $4.7 million. And the only compensation he got to take him was a 3rd-round pick. You'd be losing your mind if these were the type of moves that Lou Lamoriello was.
It's almost like trading away Devontae's for 2 seconds.
What did they get?
No, it's almost everything has been worse than that. Imagine
giving up a first, your best prospect, and a young winger who performed on a different situation for a guy who played a complete shitter at the end of the year. It's almost like giving up a first and a second for a 3rd-line center. It's almost like giving up a first and a 4th for a guy who was on a rental deal there in Zajac, and a guy who's a bottom 6 forward in Palmieri. It's almost kind of like that.
What did all that turn into? I mean, is it the same as trading away Seth Jarvis to get rid of 1 year of Patrick Marleau?
I think it's the same as what we've had as what they've got.
We've traded away a caliber player like Seth Jarvis. Get out of here.
We don't even have any. We got a couple players like that.
I know you don't think much of Devontae's, but the guy is pretty talented.
Yeah, Devontae's good. Come on now.
He's good. No, he's good. He's definitely
great.
Good.
He's great.
What
Top
did
10 defender in the NHL?
Was Morgan O'Reilly? I'm sorry. Is O'Reilly right on? Is he on the last year of his deal?
Yes, he's going to go to free agency.
What did they give up to get him?
First, second, third, and fourth, or something like that. No.
Sure. Yep.
Okay. If you moved Brock Nelson, you maybe could have got certainly a 1 and a 2, probably a 1.
It wasn't only they got a Chari in that deal also.
You could have got a 1 and a 2 absolutely for Brock Nelson.
Of course you can. I know you can. I'll tell you what they gave up. They gave up.
I mean, he's 31 years old. His numbers are comparable.
Yeah, they gave up a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4.
I mean, God. I mean, you absolutely could have got a first and a second. Maybe even a first, a second, and a third.
For Brock
Nelson.
Yeah, for sure.
Achari's not worth a 4th round pick, honestly.
Of course you can get a first, second, and a third for Nelson. Of course you can.
See, I mean, look what St. Louis did. They realized they weren't in the mix. Move them. Tarasenko, move them. Because guess what? They're not going to be there when St. Louis is competitive again. They're not going to be part of the organization. That's why you move those guys. You just have to be someone who's realistic and say, you know what? This team isn't good enough.
And I hope a new general manager is what it takes. I think that's the only way it takes it. Lou's not going to admit to that. Lou's not going to rebuild or start the retool process. It's going to take a new GM. It's going to take a new vision. It's going to take somebody new in the office.
Yeah, and listen, I am not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying if you go that route, then Ilya Sorokin has to be part of the parting party.
If that's what it requires, then
I'm telling you objectively, that is what it requires.
You know why Islander fans can blame Lou Lamoriello? Because he mismanaged so many assets and left everything barren. We had to trade away a guy who's a potential Hall of Fame caliber goalie because Lou Lamoriello squandered everything away.
Not really.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
No.
What makes you say not really?
Not really, because even if you had all those draft picks that you traded away, you're maybe that much closer to where you want to be. That much.
If you did not, no. You even look at this freaking trade deadline. If you didn't squander this trade deadline in one of the deepest drafts we've seen in decades, you would be in a much different situation. If you trade away Brock Nelson, if you trade away guys on expiring deals, Varlamov, Mayfield, and Parise, you're looking at least the first 2 seconds and a third, while also keeping your first round pick.
That's how you expedite a rebuild.
You have two first, 3 seconds.
At some point in time, every team has to do that.
Okay. If we kept our first and we kept Ratu, and then we got another first and another second or 2 seconds at the deadline, and then you told me, okay, we need to trade Brock Nelson, and we need to trade.
Maybe you don't have to trade Brock Nelson at that point.
But why not?
Then, if
these players aren't showing up and making an impact for years.
Go ahead, Phil. I'm willing to move them. Go ahead. I'm on board.
Because these players are not coming in for. Listen, you're getting.
Ratu is ready to step in next year.
No, he's not.
Yes, he is.
No, he isn't.
He could play. He could play a bottom.
He had one goal for Abbotsford in like 30 games. He is not ready to play.
He didn't have one goal in 30 games. Let me pull that up. That's not true.
He did have a goal.
One goal. He had. Well, one of them was an empty netter. If you want to count that one.
Oh, those don't count now. Okay. Didn't Holmstrom have an empty net goal?
No.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he did.
Holmstrom did not have an empty net.
He went to a new team with a new line and had 12 points in 25 games. First year playing on an HLI surface. People keep forgetting that. First year playing in an HLI surface.
Great.
He goes ahead and puts up 12 points in 25 games. That almost sounds like another guy we had down there in Bridgeport named Simon Holmstrom that some people think very highly of.
But no, it took 3 years for Simon Holmstrom to get 12 points.
Ratu is not going to be in the NHL next year.
Okay, we shall see. We shall see.
But
I think he's a guy who could have played bottom six. But go ahead.
Phil has piqued my interest because he's willing to move Brock Nelson. So you've moved Varlamov.
I'm moving Brock is contingent on moving Sorokin for me.
Yeah,
no. Either move them both or you don't move either of them.
I think if you could have started this properly at this year's trade deadline, you wouldn't have needed to get your rebuild window is 3 to 4 years instead of 4 to 5.
No, it isn't, because these late first round picks take time.
Your pick would not have been a late first round pick. Your pick would have been a lottery selection for the Islanders if you determined to trade away guys like Mayfield.
13th overall pick. That person's going to definitely be ready in 2 years.
13th? No, this is saying we're not trading for Bo Horvat.
Yeah, we probably would have picked around 12 or 13 if I had to guess.
Okay.
I'm saying it probably because we just talked about how great Bo Horvat, the acquisition of Bo Horvat was that won us so many games down the stretch. That probably bumped us up the ladder. Maybe we would have been bottom 10.
Okay, so let's just say we're 9th.
Okay.
So you've got a guy who's 9th in in one of these generational type drafts. You don't want to miss one guy like that.
No one has any idea. It could be.
They've been hyping this up as a draft. It's been the best draft in decades, plural, not decades.
I've seen a lot of players hyped up. Again, you're not going to get me excited about this when we were promised when Oliver Wahlstrom was drafted, this is the best kid in the U.S. program, and he's going to be X, Y, and Z, and he turns out to be roughly Cal Clutterbuck.
He wasn't even the best kid in the U.S. program.
Oh, he's better than Cal Clutterbuck. Come on.
When Cal Clutterbuck was his age, I don't know that he's better than Cal was at his age.
Come on, Cal Clutterbuck can't shoot the puck like Oliver Wahlstrom.
Cal Clutterbuck shot the puck really well when he was young.
Stop.
He did.
Phil, I'm willing to buy in on this Nelson talk. So we've moved Varlamov.
I'm moving Nelson and I'm moving Sorokin.
Well, let's just say what happens. Let's just say what a smart GM would have done, realizing the team wasn't good enough when it wasn't. You don't trade for Horvat. You keep your own first. You move Varlamov, Horvat, and Parise, and you get yourself what? 1, 2 2s and a 3, right?
At least.
Okay, so let's say that. So you got 2 1s, 3 2s, and a 3.
If you're still hell bent on trading a guy like Pavillier because he needs to change the scenery, you can
move
trade
the
him
off
this season for draft capital too.
You could not have gotten anything for Pavillier.
That's okay. Move him anyway. If you think here's the thing, he needed to change the scenery. Obvious,
Sure.
Right? So you move for a 4th round pick. It doesn't matter. You don't have to pick all those spots. You can, hey, we really like a couple of these players. Let's move one of those seconds with our late first to move up so we get 2 higher first. There's so many things you could do. When you have nothing in the cupboard and you have no draft picks, you have no maneuverability. There's nothing you can do. So you're stuck just re-signing guys and hoping that maybe they can replicate what they did 3, 4, 5 years ago. It's just it's not sustainable.
Again, a team like Ottawa has been drowning in first-round picks for years now, and high first-round picks, very, very high first-round picks, and they've been hitting on their first-round picks, as a matter of fact. And they're still 8 to 10 points short of the playoffs. 5 years later.
They have not.
They have not had nightmare.
They have not had high first-round picks.
Yes, they did. Stutzla, they had 2 top 5.
Let's go back since 2015. Shabbat is 18, right? That's the earliest pick they had in that year. 2015 was 18th. That's
I'm talking about when did they start their rebuild? They started their rebuild
2016, 11th. 2017, 28th. 2018, 4th. 2019.
Listen, but 19th, again, they started
3rd and 5th.
TJ, when did they start the rebuild? When did Ottawa start the rebuild?
They've been in a perpetual rebuild, no?
No. They went to the Eastern Conference Finals, and then
they picked 28th.
Right. They went to the ECF. They were 1 game short of going to the Stanley Cup.
2018.
So 5 years. It's been 5 years.
What? Brady Tkachuk got 4th overall and had 26th overall selection. Then they had 19th the next year. Then they had a 3rd and a 5th in 2020.
What year did they have the 19th?
2019.
2019. Why didn't they have
their guy?
I'm just trying to think of why they didn't have their pick. Who did they trade that pick for?
But
they must have traded that pick at the deadline or something for someone.
Their ownership group has been nightmarish.
Okay, so they again back up to 2017, just so I could see for a second. Correct. So they went to the Eastern Conference Finals. They picked Shane Bowers, and then that summer they traded Mike Hoffman. They traded Erik Karlsson for let's just call Josh Norris a first-round pick because the Sharks had just picked him in the first round, right? So they got a first-round pick from the Sharks. They got Josh Norris in that deal. They traded Karlsson. Who else did they trade that year? And then at that deadline, they traded Mark Stone for Eric Brandstrom, who was, again, a recent first-round pick.
Well, but
Josh Norris is good. Josh Norris is good. He was injured this last year.
He's great. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yep. And they also traded Matt Duchene.
But why did they trade all these guys? Because their ownership group didn't want to pay anybody.
Sure.
Irrelevant.
That's what I'm talking about.
They started a rebuild then.
Well,
and how have they been in that rebuild?
Guess what?
They're about
to see the end of all the hard work, right?
It's getting better this year.
It's 5 years already. And they've had really high picks. Okay, Brady Tkachuk, 4th pick. Lassie Thompson, he's turned into nothing so far. Maybe he'll turn into something. Who knows?
2020, sure. You had
2 out of 5. So far we have 3 top 5 picks. 3. Okay.
Boucher was a terrible pick.
Tyler Boucher,
awful pick. Awful
10th
pick.
overall.
Well, he's still young yet.
He's awful selection. He's an awful selection. I could tell you that already. He'll never.
I don't know who he is.
Awful selection. 2022. No first round selection. They've exited the rebuild. They've exited the portion of acquiring as many draft pieces as humanly possible.
Because they traded it for DeBrincat.
Not a bad scenario for them. Guess what? They're on the other side. So
again, and it's taken 5 years to get to a point where they're 8 to 10 points short.
You have to do it at some point in time. You have to do that.
They gutted everything.
You can't just continue to kick the can down the road.
They took the route of the trading Sorokin, trading everything away, right? They traded away their Sorokin.
Because that is what you have to do if you're going to do it. That's what you're not understanding. You keep not understanding that if you're going to do it, that is what you have to do, because these young picks don't accumulate to enough to make as big an impact as quickly as you think they do.
I never said it was good. Here's the thing. I just think
TJ's saying it's going to be quick.
You're saying it's going to be quick. I think it's going to be
4 to 5 years.
That's what I think. 4 to 5 years.
4 to 5 years means you have to trade Sorokin. That means you have to trade Sorokin.
If you start, well, I don't think you can start now. It's too late to start now.
It's not.
Because, it's too late to start now. You can't even start till next year because you have nothing this year. You have nothing this year.
What do you mean you have nothing this year?
We have nothing.
We've traded away our first and second round pick already for this year.
You can't. You're telling me you can't get 3 first round picks between Sorokin and Brock Nelson tomorrow?
Could you? Perhaps.
Of course you can.
Perhaps you could.
Okay, but who's going to be trading for Sorokin now, right now, before he's a UFA?
Many teams.
Okay,
I think he's ultimately talented. I think he has a value in the market.
A lot of teams will trade for him. The New Jersey Devils will give you. Well, they don't have a first round pick, but a lot of teams would give up a ton for him right now.
Okay.
Listen, the Colorado Avalanche, before they went into their Stanley Cup season that summer, they traded a first and a third for Darcy Kemper. For 1 year, just to rent Darcy Kemper.
Landeskog is out all next year.
Yeah.
Colorado might trade a bundle for Sorokin.
They're going to have to give me 3 number ones.
Yeah, I'm not taking 2 from them just based on
and a player.
Okay, and they might just do it. They might give you Gerard and a first round pick for him.
I don't want Gerard.
It needs to be more than that.
I don't want Gerard.
Not Gerard. I meant Byram. No, they're not going to give Byram.
All right, I take Byram though.
They're not trading Byram. Yeah, again, I am not saying that a rebuild route is a bad route. I'm just saying a half-assed rebuild route is a very bad route. The only team that could half-ass a rebuild is the New York Rangers.
Is the Kings.
Yeah,
it's different though. It's different because how's it different? Yeah. Because they had 2 Hall of Famers stick around.
We have 1 Hall of Famer possibly in net.
Nah,
you could here's the thing. If you wanted to, you could keep the goalie. You could, and Barzell, and no one's going to pay for Horvat. No one's going to trade for Horvat.
We stupidly went ahead and gave up way too much time, way too much money. Gave up way too much for him.
I mean, he's not going to earn that contract. He's just not.
Never.
I mean, for me,
no one earns their contract. I mean, listen, you're at the point where most Rangers fans
earn his contract.
There's some players again, you're at a point where Ranger fans would literally give Panarin away for free if possible. Like, that's just the way these things work. You're going to reach a point with Johnny Gaudreau in 3 years from now where Columbus fans are going to want to give him away for free. All right.
Yeah, but we want to give Horvat away now for free.
I don't want to give Horvat away. I don't want to.
I
have no interest in giving them away for free.
Here's the thing. I'm all in for full rebuild. But the whole thing is, if we had been smart, we could have done a little bit of both, like Washington did. I'm not saying Washington's perfect, but I mean
they are going to fail miserably with what they're trying to do. If what they're trying to do is salvage Ovechkin and Oshie and Carlson and Backstrom, they are going to fail miserably.
And Wilson too, yeah.
And Wilson entering that last year of his contract. I mean, the dumbest thing they could do is a long-term extension for Wilson, but they're going to do it anyways. But I think everyone and their mother, what's he, 31 years old now?
I don't know, 30? I don't know.
Something like that. Would be a horrible idea, but they're going to do it. Watch, I guarantee you they're going to do a long-term extension.
But we've done the same thing for years, and you're not saying that's a horrible idea for us to do.
We don't have a 38-year-old center coming off of hip resurfacing surgery who came back and looked awful. We don't have a 38 or 39-year-old Ovechkin. We don't have a 37-year-old TJ Oshie. These are their best guys. We don't have a 33-year-old Kuznetsov who has an open trade request for the last 2 years and whose play was garbage this year. Kuznetsov was terrible for them this season.
Maybe they just need a new coach because Laviolette wasn't getting the job done because he sucks. How many 40-goal scorers did the Islanders have this last year? I am interested about that.
None.
Okay, gotcha. Well, Washington and that old washed up fella, what's his name? Alexander.
He's not washed up.
Oh,
He's not washed up. That's just the only thing he does, though, is all.
Okay, he's over a point a game.
It's important, though. I think you got to mix. Scoring goals is pretty important.
It is important, but it's not the only thing. Like, I mean, again, if you think scoring goals is the only thing that's important, then you would have a very diminished view of Matt Barzal.
Didn't say that. I just said it's important. He's a one-trick pony, but he's a better one-trick. His trick is better than Anders Lee's trick.
For sure it is.
Sure, and it's better than Brock Nelson's trick.
For sure it is. But other than Ovechkin, who is a top 5 player of all time, all those other guys we're talking about are either finished or approaching finished, where it would not make sense to build around any of them.
We're in the same spot.
He's 20. He's 20.
No, we're not.
We are in
I'm
the
sorry?
same spot.
Dylan Strome's not finished. He's 25.
Dylan
Nelson's not finished. He's 29.
I'm entirely unimpressed with Dylan Strome.
Okay. He had 65 points. Where would that put him on the Islanders?
First, second.
Great. If he was on the Islanders, he would have 40 points. I don't care. He's playing on a line with Alex Ovechkin. He doesn't have Ovechkin on the Islanders.
Well, you said you wouldn't even want him on the Islanders.
I said I would rather have Brock Nelson than Alex Ovechkin.
See,
I didn't say I don't want him on the Islanders.
I disagree with you there. I think
Ovechkin. That's fine. I personally would take Brock Nelson.
Brock Nelson doesn't play any defense anymore.
He doesn't play some defense. That's true.
He used to when Detrozzi did. He didn't this year. You got the other statue on that line.
Strome can't skate. He would be just a terrible fit on the Islanders.
No, he'd be perfect fit for the Islanders. Can't skate. He fits right in with the Islanders. What the hell are you talking about? He'd probably be the second fastest skater on the team after Barzal.
Their farm system's not impressive either.
All right, you don't like Washington. We got it. But I mean, I like what
Listen, I agree with you, Grumpy. I think there is a very decent likelihood that Pittsburgh can figure out a way to rebound with, if they can figure out a way to get rid of Petrie's contract, because that trade blew up on them.
Yep.
I think that's a spot they definitely need to upgrade. What was the other trade that blew up on him? Oh, the Ty Smith for Marino trade.
Yeah, I can't believe they gave up on Marino.
What a bad trade. He looks fantastic with the Devils. But
Smith is still pretty young, isn't he?
He's 23.
All right, no, he's not that young.
He's not. I don't think he's going to pan out.
Yeah,
he was terrible with the Devils. He couldn't make. I mean, if you can't make this Pittsburgh blue line, then
it's their goaltenders.
But their blue line was also bad, though. Their defense was bad. Petrie.
Yeah, their defense wasn't great, but their goaltender. All right, you know how bad it was. Dmitry Kulikov was an upgrade for them on defense.
Correct.
Their defense is not.
But that says a lot about Ty Smith, though.
Yeah, yeah.
That right there says a lot about Ty Smith.
But Jari's just horrible.
He is, but again, there's no guarantee. But I will yield that if they could figure out their way into better goaltending, fix the defense, and maybe get a little bit of depth scoring, because their depth scoring really was non-existent this year, then yeah, their top guys they carried the mail. Crosby had 100 points. Malkin played every game this year. He wasn't injured at all. Zucker, big question mark for them if they bring him back. He had maybe a career year this year. Gensel was fantastic this year. Rust fell off a bit, but he's still a good player. So, their top 6 is loaded.
And here's the thing. They're not winning a Stanley Cup either.
Yes. I was about to say, we all agree, though.
But they were, okay. They would have won they could have won a Stanley Cup last year if they had a goalie. They were the most impressive team in the East by far.
Yeah, but they don't have a goalie.
Yeah.
And then they went into the season knowing they didn't have a goalie, and they still didn't get one. They went through the trade deadline and still didn't get a goalie.
And that's why their front office is gone.
That's why they're all gone.
Absolutely.
That should be step 1, get a goalie. Step 2, get a goalie. Step 3, get another goalie. That's what they need to do. If they get a goalie, and here's the thing, the defensemen that they need, they're affordable. I don't know how much cap space they have, but
they don't have a lot of cap space.
But you can get solid defensive style defensemen. You can get those on the cheap. They have to be a little bit older, but you can get solid veteran guys. Maybe Giordano. How was Giordano for Toronto this year?
He fell off at the end, but he's also under contract still, and he's
okay.
1 year left.
he's going to retire in Maple Leaf because he's from Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah, he's
The
finished.
Penguins have $20 million in cap space to figure out a goaltender, a Dumoulin replacement if they don't bring Dumoulin back on the back end.
I think they're going to bring Dumoulin back.
They'll probably bring Dumoulin back. I would think so.
Was he hurt this year, Dumoulin?
I don't know, but he wasn't that great. They need, if they're not bringing Zucker back, then they're going to need a top 6 forward to replace Zucker. He was fantastic for them. And then they've got Benino, Heinen, and Archibald are expiring, and Drew O'Connor's. I mean, so they have the cap space to maneuver. Like if you figure a top 6 player is going to cost them $6 million, a goalie costs them $5 million, is 11. Dumoulin will cost you $4 million, is 15. So yeah, they'll have like another $5 million to work with to
goalie. They need a goalie,
right? And if they can move Petrie's contract. All right, they're not going to move Petrie's contract. 6.25 for 2 more years. No one's taking that.
He's not going anywhere.
He's not going anywhere.
I will say though, I don't know. It's more of just the same. It's more of the same for the Islanders, and that's what I fear. Unless there's radical changes that are made, which there's a possibility. I say the longer and longer they go without announcing anything, the more and more I think it's possible that there are some definite radical changes that are going on. And hey, that leads to good things, I think, for the Islanders potentially. Could also lead to bad things for the Islanders potentially. We don't know until the guy is announced. That's for certain. But I'll be interested to see how it pans out. Hopefully we hear from them soon. We should hopefully hear from them soon, right? You figure.
It has to be within the next 6 weeks because the draft's coming up. So that's their deadline. The deadline is the day before the draft.
If you don't hear anything in 6 weeks, yikes.
Sure.
Who sits at the draft table?
Scott Malkin.
Could bring Charles Wong's son up.
Oh boy.
He's always come up there and I always loved when he was wearing like the jerseys that were always way too big on his arms and shit like that.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing is you would think like, well, they need to form an exploratory committee and that takes time and this and that. But if they already have the replacement figured out, then they really don't need to be in a rush to announce it. If they're working on Lou's timeline and letting him draft his statement on his letterhead, I am stepping away from hockey because blah, 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 blah.
I'm too fucking old to do it anymore.
Right.
That should be his answer. Because I suck. I can't do it anymore. I forget my name half of the day. I forget, oh, that's right. I had to go to the bathroom. I already did in my pants. I mean, those are the type of things he has to worry about now.
I think what should happen is we should get rid of Lou, and then the Devils should bring Lou back. And let him win.
I don't think they make that mistake again.
And then let him win 3 more cups there.
Who's the assistant GM in Jersey?
I don't know.
I just want somebody young and progressive as a general manager. I don't want somebody who's 60 years old. I don't want that. I want somebody in like late 30s, 40.
I'm taking over. I'm gonna send in my application.
Don't waste your time.
You're gonna be the top reference on my resume.
Oh, okay. All right.
What's Grumpy's role going to be? That's the real question.
If they hire me, I'll bring you on for sure. I'll for sure bring you on.
I'll be in
Director of scouting.
I'll be the guy who's the Turk. I go to the guys. Come into the office. We don't need you anymore.
Bring your playbook.
Bring your playbook.
Let's. We're gonna try to get through some comments here. Sorry, guys.
Okay. Hopefully, just select comments.
We're gonna try to look at a few comments. I'm sorry.
We'll go through them in warp speed.
Yeah, TJ, it appears we were wrong about Carolina. Even without their 2 best offensive players, they're not their 2 best.
We touched on this already. Yeah,
they're still really good. Lindy Ruff was in disbelief after game 4. He shouldn't be. They're good.
Anthony Rizzi was more curious about, please do not tell us that possibly Dubas could be a response or the answer for the Islanders. That's why they're being so quiet. What do you think the likelihood of that is, Phil?
Very unlikely.
How about you, Grump?
I don't want him either.
You'll like this one, Grumpy. I'll let you read it. Freedom Fund.
TJ is late because he hasn't finished all the chores the lovely Miss Page gave him. We know who runs that house. He and Lion. Freedom Fund Adventure then says, the longer this goes on, the more I believe change is happening. Islanders now have an opportunity to trade Anders Lee to Nashville. Trotz believes strongly in Lee as captain and will want an ally in the liquor room. I think actually Anders Lee would have to get down and do some licking for him to get traded to Nashville.
Oh my God.
Of course, it was locker room is what he meant to say.
Oh, man. Anthony Rizzi says,
Funny how Chicago got Bedard. The draft isn't fixed, right? Big market, original 16. We talked about that months ago.
Yeah.
Lost both Hall of Famers in Kane and Taves. Now they jump up and get Bedard, their next superstar. And if you noticed, Kevin Weeks announced before going to commercial that they had a change in roster and that Columbus was picking third, and the first pick was going to be either Anaheim or Chicago. We knew it was Chicago. And then they hadn't opened up the envelope yet. So
okay. There's no envelope. Like
it's
fine. It's fine to be a conspiracy theorist about it and believe that it's fixed. That's totally fine. But Weeks already knows the order before he's coming up because they did the lottery like 6 hours prior.
They never should have had him do that. That's not.
They shouldn't because it doesn't pass the smell test. But I mean, Daly has the cards and he's just flipping the cards. They already know who's there. Weeks knows who's there, and he's fed lines. You think Weeks in real time is ad-libbing facts about every single team? Like, if you think that, then it's just like a breathtaking job. Like the last time the Philadelphia Flyers selected 8th overall, they did blah 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 blah. Like, you think he has that knowledge firsthand?
No, I was all on the teleprompter.
Practice, they prep, they have of course
it's all a teleprompter. But the whole thing is, what does it say about the way ESPN treats the NHL? I mean, it looks like it was held like in somebody's, like bomb shelter. I mean, I'm like, you look at all these other teams, like their people are there. They're, they got people in the studio. They're cheering. Hey, it's like everybody's like. I mean, look at Davidson and who's the GM for Columbus?
Kekalainen.
Yeah, they were like shit, and that was before it was announced. I mean, he announced it on TV, and then they already knew, so they were pissed off as soon as
that was an error by the producer, though.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it's like, but that's the way they treat the NHL. It's like the redheaded stepchild of sports as far as ESPN's concerned.
But ESPN didn't produce that. They just carried it. I think that was produced by NHL Network.
Terrible job. And Kevin Weeks, man, he's all middle body weight, isn't he?
What about Kevin Weeks?
What about Kevin, a few pounders?
What about Weeksy for GM?
No.
Not progressive enough for you?
No. I don't like the way his suit fit.
You don't want another goalie running the team. I get it.
We've had that already.
We've already had a goalie run the team. You want a forward.
You know what? Oh, Tockett's already coach. I wouldn't mind bringing Tockett in to coach.
Declan saying, hopefully Dubas is coming.
He didn't say hopefully. He said Dubas is coming. His past with Lou and the Islanders, not talking to the media. Lou stays as president of hockey ops.
Yeah, I would, again, 5% chance. That's all I give that.
And listen, I like what Dubas did. There's no help, or there's no helping Toronto, though. That core simply can't win a cup. He made some nice moves to try to help, though.
Yeah, but no one really understands what moves Dubas made in totality, but that's fine.
Well, he had the core there, and it's just
core was already there.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is, so he tried to move. I like what he did, particularly last year. I liked how they tried to get away from just flash and dash, which was
last year. They traded 2 seconds and a third for Giordano and Blackwell, and then they also traded. They didn't trade the first round pick. They traded the first round pick of the draft to dump Mrazek. That's when they traded the first, which was a terrible error. But that's all they did. All they did was get Giordano and Blackwell for 2 seconds and a third. It was fine. Oh, yeah, and then they used another second-round pick to dump the Nick Ritchie contract. Terrible.
Yeah, I like the fact that even in the offseason, they made some moves to get more sandpaper on the team. That finally they got rid of that piece of shit Engvall. He was just an anchor. He was the reason why they hadn't won a playoff series forever.
They would be winning this series. The series would have been won already if they had Engvall. But that's a different discussion.
Very good. Anthony Rizzi says, no way. Dubas is a young Lou. In his entire time there, he never needed a goalie and never got one. Same as Lou. We needed a top goal scorer for many years, and what does Lou give us? Shit.
Oh, man. I got a comment here from Nick D. Grumpy.
Bill, TJ, Grumpy, how are you guys doing tonight? Fire Lou Lamoriello and Fredo immediately. So I got that out of the way. It would be a disaster if Dubas comes in here if the rumors are true.
So apparently those are the rumors that are floating around. Mikey D. Grumpy.
Mikey D says Lou and Lane not talking yet is simply unacceptable unless they're all on the way out. I feel so bad for the media. Guys like Stefan Rosner does such a good job, and now he has to make up articles instead of asking Lou and Lane questions.
Oh, no.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's unacceptable. It might be unacceptable. We just have no idea.
Right. They could be all on the way out.
Yeah.
Mikey D says Emily Kaplan with the horrible hairdo reported today that the Rangers asked Lou to talk to Trotz in December. Didn't say if he let them. I doubt it. Wonder who they hire.
Elliot Friedman today said they're linked to Babcock. Who knows?
Wow. I don't
I
know.
hope
I
they
don't
get
think that's a
Babcock.
fit. Here's the thing. He's absolutely the opposite of Gallant.
But he's also, listen, it's the soft generation, the Gen Z, right? So if you have confidence issues with some of those young players, just wait until they meet Babcock. He'll take them and he'll finish them off.
That's right. Yeah, I don't think
if Lafreniere is struggling with confidence, wait until he meets Mike Babcock. Oh boy.
Oh, but maybe some of these guys need some tough love.
They just
maybe
want
some
to
guys
cry. They want to go home and cry. That's what they want to do.
Thomas Morris Grump.
Would Columbus trade Line A for Dobson and Wallstrom?
Yes.
I think they would.
Of course they would.
I don't
wouldn't
think
do
the
that.
Islanders should, though.
They should not do that. No.
Oh,
I wouldn't take Line A for free. I mean, his contract's awful.
He's young, though. How old is he?
24, 25?
Still pretty young.
He's the year after the Barzell draft. Yeah, but he's making like $9 million to play like 40 games a year because he can't stay healthy.
That's true. He cannot stay healthy. Dallas McDonald says, good evening from Nova Scotia again tonight. What's with all the Dubas rumors? You guys likey or nah? Nah. Here's the thing. He's better than Lamarillo, though.
I disagree.
Lamarillo sucks.
Really?
He's been a catastrophe.
I disagree. I think Lou cleaned up a lot of the Toronto mess and set him up with a really good situation, and he has not been able to advance it further at all.
Lou
That's what I
sucks.
think.
Next comment.
Okay. There you go. Rick Roma Grump.
Rick Roma. Devils are done, but their roster is really good and really young, and they still have one of the better prospect pools. Lou, take notes. You know what? Carolina's good too. Young too. Very young. Very young. AP says the Isles never say on time podcast.
There it
I
is.
wonder who he's talking to. Freedom Fund Adventures says Phil's on. Great episode for old people who enjoy watching sadistic cats play with mice. I need to see a purge this summer amongst the forwards and anything not vital that gets draft picks and assets. Absolutely.
There you go. Flex crew, Grumpy.
Typical freaking TJ. It's 8:30, my guy.
Yeah,
I like how his thing is looking at the watch.
It's from
Frank from Empire State Construction says, is Dubas really that bad? I look at the Leafs team and our roster, and I'm like, if Dubas bad, what is Lou?
Again, all their best players are not from Dubas.
Doesn't matter.
What do you mean doesn't matter? He's not, again,
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
It's not his product.
It doesn't matter. His team's better. Go, I just pulled the Phil. Doesn't matter. Team's better.
Oh, God.
His team is better because
here's a good one. John Smith says, I'm sick of arguing with Phil on Twitter. He's annoying.
Now we got a whole bunch of these, like where they're kind of like no, like where they're like, I'll point them out here. Where Phil's like, I like Phil when he's on his podcast, but he seems on Twitter he's completely different. Now,
because guess what? We're restraining bolts for Phil. He's a menace.
Absolutely.
Well, he's one of those guys you can't let him. He's like Trump on Twitter. Just cannot let him get on Twitter without some type of adult supervision.
Christ almighty. I was about to ask you because we got a lot of them where it's like, Phil, I feel like Phil just likes to poke and prod the people on
That's
Twitter.
what he does.
Phil is, like
Absolutely.
I see a lot,
but only half the time.
He's a troll.
Honestly,
I don't know when he's trying to tell the truth or not because he doesn't put smiley faces on these things.
I was about to say,
I'll tell you what it is. I'll find like narratives on Twitter that are going around, and then I'll just sometimes just drop something to completely make fun of it, like tongue in cheek. So like everyone's like, yeah, my theory is that, Lou, part of the package of him coming was a guarantee from ownership 5 years ago that Chris was going to take over and the line of succession. I don't like reading these things that just make no sense. So today I put out a tweet was just like basically, yeah, what I think is going on. I think Chris got a 15% ownership stake in the team, and they're just trying to figure out a way around that now. Like just something that's so much more radical and insane than the ideas that are floating out. And then someone like even respond to that, like, I can never tell when you're being serious. And I'm like, obviously I'm not being serious, but do you really think a group
Put a
that
smiley
just
face at the end, then people will know.
right? Do you think an ownership group that like recently purchased a team as an investment, everything's an investment, is going to sign off that like, yeah, you just have carte blanche ownership of all decision-making power. And not only that, when you're done, 100% signed in ink, your son is going to take, like, no one does that.
True. Here's the thing. Phil's a freaking troll. He's a menace to the Islanders fan base. I've said that for a long time. He obviously trolls because I don't read his tweets, but now I get access to see them. I'm like, Phil. And he's tell divergent points of view in the same day. He'll argue both sides against the other in the same day. It's crazy. Gungut says, last time Phil was on, I asked him what I could do to look more like him, and he was gracious enough to give me some fashion tips. The next question I have, what are your preferred foods, Phil?
I like eating pizza.
Pizza.
Eating lots of pizza.
Pizza,
Pizza
very good.
guy.
I don't think anyone doesn't like pizza.
Pizza's the best.
I can eat
Never
pizza
gets
every
old.
day.
I can eat pizza every day, 100%.
Yeah.
And I'm going to let everybody know, unfortunately, we will not be able to get through all of these comments. So I'm just looking
It's
at
fine
them.
because like 17 of them that you pulled up already were all the same thing about Dubas. So you, I know Grumpy had a recommendation like 2 weeks ago when you've got like 80 people asking the same question, just do like 1 or 2 of them.
Right? But it does. Then I get
answering Dubas questions.
Here's the thing: I get reprimanded and berated after the show. You don't know what the hell you. I said, let me do it then.
That's not what it is. Grump, here's the thing.
Here he goes.
You can't do this and then read through every fucking comment to determine which ones are going to discern which ones are going to provide additional context.
I took the Everlyn Wood speed reading course. Why don't you just let me do it?
Right.
Grumpy.
Thoughts on the Barzal chemistry quote?
We didn't talk about this today.
Go ahead, Phil.
What was the quote?
I'll pull up. It was from Everyday Isles. Shit, give me a sec here.
He said, our chemistry sucks. Our captain's a bitch. We got Bailey. We got that Ichabod Crane looking Croc Nelson on his team. Pierre Engvall, he's a piece of trash. He said, this team blows. The GM is old as hell. The coach is a pain in the ass.
I feel like if Nelson was good looking, you would like him. I think that's what holds you back, Grumpy. I think if he was a good looking kid.
You know what? Honestly, it's because I watched him for years and years when he was coming up, always scoring just unimportant goals. He'd score a lot of goals every year, but it would be unimportant. You'd score 2 goals in a game, we lose 9-3. I mean, I can't. And then no, I can't do that. Sorry, can't do it. Soft as hell. Won't 6'4", won't throw a body check. Just refuses. That's why he and Engvall are such a good fit together.
Jesus Christ.
Do you have that quote?
Yeah, they post a lot of these fucking quotes all over the place.
I'll read the next comment.
Yeah, please do. Thanks.
Flex Crew says, I love how this franchise has been quiet for 2 weeks now. Unacceptable. We spend money on this team. We deserve updates. I agree. Frank from Empire State says, hello, grumpy old man and TJ in the bear.
I don't know what "end the bear." I assume that's Phil. I'm wondering if there was a reason why you're called the bear.
I would have no idea why I would be called the bear.
Phil does not look like a bear.
Yeah, that was.
Here we go.
Flex Crew. One of the ones from earlier, Grumpy. There was one from earlier. They were talking about Philly flip flop and whether he really wants to do or really believes what he's putting on Twitter.
Oh, because I wanted to read that Philly flip flop. I love reading that quote. Phil knows the feeling. This is from Wood of Films. Are you rooting for your Leaf friends, Phil?
No.
That's a no. I just showed Flex Crew says I just showed my girlfriend Phil was on and she flipped the phone off and said, Grumpy better roast his ass. She hates how he dogs on Sorokin. My girlfriend might be mad, but Phil is very entertaining.
Yeah, there he is. There it is.
He's not entertaining. I'm entertaining. He's just my little comedy tool that I use for today. Frank Kaplan says, nice to see our owners, coach, and Geezer GM all missing in action since breakdown day. Now you see why we haven't won shit in 4 decades. This joke of an organization that never gets it right. Sorry, 3 Eastern Conference final appearances since losing in 84 doesn't cut it. It's pissing me off more and more. That's fair. That's a fair complaint. That said, it's a new ownership group.
They've been better.
I mean, yeah, let's be honest. Wong, he just bought it for the real estate. Next comment, TJ.
It's up there already. Go.
Flex Crew says, I wouldn't even give you 5%, my guy. You are always fashionably late. That's you, TJ. My Little Brownie says there's an AHL award winner in Bridgeport. Andorov. Why such silence on him? Well, he's really not that good.
Because
Google says, Phil, do you feel that Sun X has added a new element to the TJ and the Grumpy Old Man podcast, or is he merely a Josh Bailey type living off past glories?
Yeah, I haven't watched that podcast enough to make a determination on that. I'm more into your Islander stuff.
So Phil has never listened to our other podcast. Google says he's full of shit. I know he didn't have.
I have not. No, admittedly, I have not.
Yeah, see you go. See, I have to call him out on his bullshit because I know what he's all about. Gungu says, Phil, were you shocked that the Rangers shot their trousers in the opening round? Was Gerard Gallant made out to be a scapegoat for the stink?
No, and yes, I think Gallant is the scapegoat. I mean, we've discussed this before. I think Drury is entirely unimpressive, and I think the Rangers had two problems. Problem number one, which is a problem that's existed for the past number of seasons, is their defense just isn't good enough. And problem number two this year was, if you're bringing in that amount of pieces, they brought in 3 new forwards at the deadline. So Mott, all right, he already had some chemistry with some of the guys, but then they needed to go down to a 16-person roster because of cap compliance issues in order to do that 8 days of salary banking to fit Kane. And then it took Kane 3 or 4 days to even show up to a game, and he missed 2 more games. And then you just threw him into the mix. Their power play was insane. And then they put Kane onto a power play that was already functionally working. So it was the proverbial too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yep.
when the chef was already 5-star. And that took away looks from Zibanejad in a big way. And then they tried to remedy that late in the series, and it was too late. So it was just a bad mix of poor defense and then a chemistry experiment completely gone wrong. It was too much. I wouldn't even say it's too much of a good thing. I mean, Kane was entirely unimpressive this year, and Tarasenko was a shell of what he was last year overall.
True,
so,
he's done.
He's not done, but he's not going to be an 80-point player again.
Yeah, he's
okay.
Done. I don't want him, by the way.
I don't want him. No, we don't want him. No.
I've got the Matt Barzal quote finally. He said, this is from Everyday Isles, it's just hard to find chemistry with anybody when every other game it's a new line.
That was from a long time ago, though.
I guess it's remaking the rounds again. That's the quote that I think people are referencing about chemistry.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's, and I brought this up before, when we're talking about Lane losing guys, I just wonder if Barzal is one of the guys he may have lost, because I remember that quote. It was early in the season, and you were talking about the carousel of players, and yeah.
All right.
I have nothing really add there.
Last 2 comments. John DeBella says, "Hi guys, I heard a rumor that Islanders are looking at Kyle Dubas." Oh, man,
yeah, we covered
We've
that.
already popped this one up, Grumpy.
Okay.
That's what
I'm just reading the ones you starred. What the film says. So, how does the Bailey dismissal go? Did they buy out the rest of his contract?
Again, I already made my prediction on that. I think they're just going to make it so uncomfortable that he's going on a mutual termination, because the buyout doesn't do much for them.
Yep, nothing.
That much.
Jay says, great idea for a spinoff. Islanders Never Say Die. Grumpy Old Man, the Evelyn Wood speed reading years, sort of like the Sopranos prequel.
Okay, I figured that maybe would mean something to you, Grumpy.
I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, since your reading sucks, how you should do it is scan the quotes like the Evelyn Wood speed reading class and just, okay, yes.
Okay.
Rick Roma says, did Grumpy really say he took an Evelyn Wood speed reading course? LOL, he's a legend. Okay, I actually did not take it. I'm a really good fast reader, but you remember, here's the thing. People of an older age would know the Evelyn Wood speed reading class.
I can't say I do, guys, but I will say this. We're 3 hours into the show. Sorry we didn't get really through any comments. It was kind of all over the place today's show. Well, hey, I enjoyed it. We're still kind of a little bit, I don't know.
We like having Phil on the show. We really do.
We needed to do a postmortem.
Yeah.
That was what it was. It was kind of like a postmortem where it was like, season's now officially over. Okay.
Not according to Phil. Season's just getting started.
Grumpy's favorite part of the season, the off season.
It is my favorite part of the season. But hope springs eternal.
The unfortunate part is the season's pretty much, well, the off season is going to be, I assume, lackluster as per usual. But Phil, I want to hear what you got to say here before we wrap things up. Now, the year I think was disappointing to say the least, but I kind of want to hear what your thoughts are. Again, season as a whole, where were the positive spots in a quick little portion too?
The positives.
Sure.
We had a great goalie. And I think we added a player who could be a difference maker going forward in Horvat. Other than that, I was very disappointed. I was very disappointed with the end result. I thought they at least should have won the first round. I thought that they had enough going on in that series that they should have won it. We could debate it until we're blue in the face, but ultimately,
I was proven right. Just say I was proven right, Phil. I was right. You were wrong. Just say it.
Ultimately, Grumpy was partially right.
No, 100% right.
Partially right. TJ was mostly wrong.
I predicted Carolina in 6. I was completely right. Actually,
you know what?
Did say 6.
TJ had Washington getting into the playoffs, so we're gonna compartmentalize.
Completely right. I'm firing on all cylinders, guys. That's what I was.
Ultimately, I believe in the bones of this team, and I believe in some of the players that they've invested in, and there is a way forward. We just need to find the right path.
Oh my God.
Oh, there it is.
Just one other comment. Drew says, Phil, you tweet more than you work your actual 9 to 5? ?
No, I work a lot more than I tweet. I also don't work 9 to 5. I work much more than just 9 to 5.
He tweets 24 hours a day. I actually asked him.
I literally just signed back a contract while we were doing this.
It's funny because I said to Phil, we talked earlier last week, and I said, I think your wife has control of your Twitter account as well, because she posts the exact opposite things that you say that you post. So you're either trolling or you both have totally different viewpoints. But all I want to say is love and laughter to everyone who listens, and even those who don't. From TJ, the grumpy old man, and PhilzFacts.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. We will be having a call-in show. I know we made the promise. We were supposed to do it this Saturday. I slept. I'm sorry.
Okay, but we're not having a show Saturday, right?
No, we had no show this Saturday. We mentioned that early on the rip. No show this Saturday.
You're talking about doing a call-in show.
We'll do a call-in show. You want to do one next Wednesday, Grump?
I don't know. I just want to make sure that everyone knows.
No show this Saturday. Be prepared for a call-in show next Wednesday or next Saturday. Thank you so much.
Or be prepared for a spontaneous emergency
podcast.
That's right.
Oh, that could be emergency podcast.
Chris podcast.
The only thing that would trigger it is a change in management.
That's right.
That absolutely would. Yeah. Oh man. Emergency podcast. But thank you so much, everybody, for listening to the show here today. Thank you so much, Phil. Thank you, Grumpy. We'll see you guys not this Saturday. We'll see you guys Wednesday, or if there's a reason for an emergency podcast, I guess. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning in the show. We'll see you guys next Wednesday.